here's something we hope you'll really like.
It's time for Planet Green.
We have launched.
We have completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
We're traveling through a dimension both of sound and ideas. We're at a place where the mind can comprehend and devise a wireless transmitter, measure time and light. Astonishing? Perhaps. But you can find it in a place that's known as
Planet Green Trees.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, the Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
All right.
We have launched.
Welcome, everybody. Planet Green Trees has officially begun. Episode number 464. We're calling it Barber of Seville, or the Barber of Shiawasse. That's I don't reveal some of one of our guests, but welcome everybody who's watching or listening. Appreciate your support. And I want to introduce our community entertainment real quick here. We got a lot of topics to get to, but they're very important for the production of the show and contribute in their own special ways. Let's start with the group over that we're calling the Broadcast Bunker. Guys, thanks for being there and helping to get the show timely executed. They can't hear us. Moving around the room, we have the one and only Jim Powers, founder of Michigan Parents for Compassion. He's also my new text buddy. We text all throughout the day about how crazy the world is, but I appreciate him for listening and not judging my texts. So, Jim, welcome. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here on this Thursday evening. Hope everybody is healthy and safe. And it sounds like we've got a great show ahead of us. So looking forward to some lively debate, especially from Jamie Lowell.
As we move around the room, we have, of course, the founder of the Steve Miller Band. He's a retired police officer. He did write the song "Take Money and Run." He seems to be like he's in space right now.
Yeah.
Just metaphysically speaking. Good friend of mine, and I appreciate all that he does. Please welcome Steve Miller. Steve Miller.
In outer space, more ways than one, huh, Jim? And I've received good news on the week. Jamie, you want to listen to this? Jesus is coming.
Wow, that's interesting. That is appropriate if we do ever get to Flow Train coming today.
Would he like to appear on the show next week?
Yes,
Can we book him for Planet Green Trees? Does he know how to Zoom?
That would get some viewership, yeah.
That is funny. You guys are funny.
Up to date on modern technology and stuff like that, possibly, right?
And of course, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna add, I think that was enough.
No, we got Tommy Chong through it. I think we could get Jesus through it too.
Yeah.
And of course,
Quick question. Tommy Chong is Jesus.
Hey.
Amanda Joslin is here. She's got a special report she's going to be discussing tonight, and I want to thank her for helping to facilitate the guest. Very excited. We started out the day, we had no idea if we were going to be able to accomplish this, and as it is said, a little elbow grease goes a long way. And the queen of the elbow grease, you could say, Amanda Joslin.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to have all these topics tonight. And yes, I think Jamie's preparing with his therapy dog right now to start the debates. He's just calming himself, getting in the right mindset. No, but honestly, it's going to be a great show. Thank you for tuning in. And any questions or comments, don't be shy. Go ahead. We're monitoring Facebook, and we'll try to squeeze in your questions.
I was going to try, I know Paul, talked to Paul Talinda earlier. He's going to potentially join us. We're going to try to send him the Zoom for this. But as we move around the room, I want to next introduce the only headed community entertainment tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He went to Flint Central High School, and many of you don't know this, but he studied wildlife management, English, and biology at Northern Michigan University. Studied American Studies, Political Science, English at the University of Michigan, Flint. He's worked the editor-in-chief of Michigan Medical Marijuana Magazine, Repealed Today, editor-in-chief of the Compassion Chronicles, Am I Legalized? Works at Planet Green Trees, owner of Midwest Multimedia Management. Got it right.
You did.
Market, the socialrevolution.org, and the Michigan Cannabis Industries Report. Please welcome Rick Thompson.
Well, thank you very much. And in addition to all of those things, I'm the only guy tonight with a massage chair. Look at that.
Hey, that looks like you're sitting pretty over there. I need to get one of those.
If I disappear for a little while, I'm just having some alone time with my chair. You know what I'm saying? Don't judge. Don't hate.
Jamie doesn't. Jamie's like, hey,
Rick
you're
is
having
just
a
going to
fun
join
without
Jesus,
me.
it sounds like.
Yes, Jesus is coming.
Yep.
And of course, last but not least, the man responsible for everything. His accomplishments are almost, maybe more, I don't know, is Rick, the two of you, a lot to mention. Can't do both and both. Let me just say, please welcome Jamie Lowell.
Well, I'm not interested in engaging in any lively debate. I might want to find out where some people are coming from. I expect Rick to get pissed off a couple of times. Remain perfectly calm.
Don't set any expectations. I guess you already have.
We'll see how absurd somebody gets to be. But I'm just
Yeah, I mean, he's ready to pull the trigger if something absurd comes up. We'll just wait and see.
Lawyer just took a job, right? I mean, he was going to argue his position, but I can't really fault him for.
He's actually a very good lawyer. I've talked to some people that know him. He's actually quite competent. And as we know, sometimes attorneys take.
Paul Talinda?
No, Paul's an excellent attorney, no question. But I'm referring to your guest at 9 o'clock. He's got a great reputation, and everybody needs.
It'll just be interesting to hear what's going on with that, what the perspectives are.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things to that he'll be updating us on in relation to how that case has unfolded in the last several days. So there's going to be a lot of good conversation with that.
So that's one of the things to talk about. Let me go over the topics real quick. I may try to rant for a second about something before we get into all this. If there's some time, I can keep it brief. No lawyer's ever said before. Topic number one, we're going to discuss, and is a leftover carryover, but too important to pass over. People of color are still targeted for marijuana and traffic stops despite legalization, study finds. Topic two, marijuana may not, terrible headline, lower your IQ. I don't know that the premise was ever accurate that it did. Topic number three, Amanda Joslin, responsible for bringing the next topic on, and will be reporting from her experience in Lansing today, taking it all in. Apparently there was another protest. I think that's number 400 this year in the last 4 weeks. And we're going to hear about that a little bit. And also special guest, Dave Kallman, the lawyer for Carl Mankey, who's got a little bit of recognition in Michigan and maybe even nationally, in that it's alleged that he opened up his barber shop in violation of the executive order and was enjoined, or they tried to enjoin him, the state of Michigan, and court proceedings took place. We have the order, the complaint. We're going to talk to Dave Kallman, the attorney for Carl, and some other interesting kind of strange things happened that are somewhat interesting in light of the all that is taking place. We also are going to be addressing topic 5, which is will medical cannabis consultations start to take place online or through telemedicine, which seems to be the way of most interactions between patients and physicians. What's the trend we're going to talk about? There's an article kind of addressing this, and we can talk about the status of Michigan's telemedicine with medical marijuana patients. And then, of course, we should really lead off with it because it is the most entertaining and enjoyable part of the show. Steve Miller's Cannabis Entertainment Corner. Steve will be
Can't wait.
That's one of my favorite parts of the whole entire show, I have to say. I really do. I have to say, because Steve, you do such a great job with your descriptions and stuff, and even the movies you pick. they're well thought out, and like there's a reason you pick each of those movies and stuff. It's cool.
All right. I like it.
And just to expand on Steve's responsibilities, so he's going to be discussing famous actors that are not very talented. Discussion.
For the third week in a row.
Third week in a row. And if we get a chance at the end, I'm going to try to defend why Slow Train Coming is the best album that Bob Dylan produced. And the caveat is this is the live version of the Slow Train Coming bootleg that he released and is worth defending. Let me just say real quickly, the opinions, comments expressed on the show by host, guests, commentators, articles, etc., may or may not represent the actual opinions or thoughts of Komorn Law Firm or associates. The thoughts or conversations that occur during this broadcast are an attempt to bring humor and parody to an otherwise non-comical scenario at times. Although some conversation guests may state facts, academic, and scientific theorems, one should consult an attorney or expert in the relevant field of query. All right, so with that said, in the show kind of outline there, I wanted to rant for a quick second. It may be kind of in line with what some of the things that are taking place, and, all over the state. I'm watching a lot here. I'm not going to go that long, but it deals with the rule of law, the concepts of the rule of law. And I'm saying these things from the perspective of an attorney. I'm not taking a political position. I remember very vividly my first day of law school when I came back from, I went backpacking through Europe and I showed up at law school. I was like not really in the frame of mind of structure. I was in a room with about 400 people that were all dying to learn the law, become lawyers. And the very intimidating Professor Lysat from University of Detroit School of Law took the stage and intimidated and scared the shit out of everybody that was in that room. But one thing he said, which always struck me, is when you drive home from this orientation, look around you, observe the things that you see, understand and see the people on the street and the cars driving past you, because once you become a lawyer, you will never see those things the same again. And I'm saying my rant here tonight about how important the rule of law is in that perspective. I'm looking at it from a lawyer's academic, what we know, how it's supposed to be, and I'm going to comment. And it begins with the idea of how important is the rule of law. Well, we have a system of government that we operate under, that we operate within. The concepts here, we have free citizens that are entitled to pursue the rights, basically the right to life, liberty, pursue happiness. The model by which our whole system is set up is documented in the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and those things that we mentioned from the topic at one point, Lucy's homework assignment, where I said the most important laws are the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, because they protect from the government. And our rule of law that we think about is not just that document that protects the freedom of the individuals from the government, but it also sets forth a structure by which our laws are to be implemented, created, and interpreted. And those are the three branches of government. Very unique compared to what took place before it, and very unique in what's been developed since then, and stands alone as a significant historical moment in the, in human development and evolution of thought and discourse and debate and freedoms and economic freedoms and many other things that are associated with that are outlined within our Bill of Rights. Now, to say that we've gotten to this point of success, both in technology, there's been a lot of things that have happened in the last 200 years, which the United States has been in the, on the forefront at times, if not most of the time. And a lot of it has been said that it is because of the freedoms that associate. It's always been the premise that in the United States, a person that is born poor without much could become educated, and pull themselves up by the bootstraps and have whatever successes that they may want. And that is something that is unique to the United States. And historically, whether or not that's really true anymore we could debate, but that's the premise. And that's why people want to come to the United States. There's freedoms that no other place has. And one of the factors that allows that to take place, the success of the citizens, is that we have a rule of law. It's not anarchy. The rule of law is written by the legislatures, it's enforced by the executive branch, and it's interpreted by the judiciary. And I can complain about all of them, but that's how it is. And I'm not satisfied with much of that, but that's how it is. But that's what we have as far as the United States and the rule of law. Now, the things that are taking place lately are really disturbing in light of that particular premise. Both at the federal level and the state level, there's been a number of attempts and execution of, at different times, executive orders. Now, these are things that are used not all the time, very rarely, and only in real emergency situations. I think clearly at the federal level, we saw a number of different executive orders attempted to be implemented by the Trump administration that were rejected in courts because they were overbroad, regarding immigration or whatnot. So there's a concept of executive order that some people may have liked, been upset that the courts didn't find it in favor, or been appalled by what they intended to do. And and that may be political, but that is an example of how executive orders are used. And of course, we all know that in the pandemic right now, all states have imposed executive orders by governors, and those rules and what is allowed, what's not allowed, have varied from state to state, and it's becoming even more of a discussion now as different states begin to open back up. But the idea that executive order is something that commands and overtakes the freedom of the citizens is a rare, and should not be the norm. I know we can even say that a lot of people within the cannabis community were excited that Gretchen Whitmer had utilized her executive order and removed the board that was legislatively created. Kind of a powerful act by the executive branch to just take a scissors and cut out this board, creating all the 4 or 5 pages that outline how they were appointed and whatnot. But this is an example, again, of executive power. But when we look across what's happening in terms of the rule of law, some things that, in the last week or so have been, I can't help but to point them out. First of all, you have the setting aside of General Flynn's conviction, the attempt by the Justice Department to do this. There's a lot of different views on this, and I want to point them out because all of them impact my point of how important the rule of law is. First of all, the idea that the Justice Department would go against the FBI and claim that their criminal charges that were brought and the issue of the perjury that was alleged and he ultimately pled guilty to, General Flynn that is, was immaterial, is remarkable in the history of the Justice Department's, the U.S. Attorney's position. In a way, what they've done is they've thrown the FBI under the bus, saying that they prosecuted someone that did not commit a crime. And I point this out because the idea that this happens regularly in accordance with the rule of law is something you've never seen. There's no precedent for it anywhere. But at the same time, I know there are a lot of criticism has gone to the investigator who had completed the investigation. Notes from after the investigation were not in the file that were turned over to the lawyer representing Flynn, which is a Brady violation. And those notes that were later found said that they had concluded the investigation, but they were going to continue on and try to either have him lose his job or try to find him, get him to perjure himself. And I know that as a criminal defense lawyer, someone that is taking an oath to defend the constitutional rights of my client, that is part of the system, that's part of the rule of law. Many times, I can point out an investigator that's overly aggressive. It's got a motive that I don't fully understand. It could be financial, it could be ego, whatever it may be. So I'm familiar with this happening. To say that it never happens or that there aren't rogue agents or people that don't have different motivations for whatever they may be is not true and not fair and not really knowledgeable on the topic. So I mention that because these are variations of making the emphasis of how important the rule of law is. I saw that there was a lawyer that got disbarred, maybe suspended, and his reasons were that, like, during a deposition, he was acting obnoxious. He was kicking the table, interrupting, doing things out of ordinary. And his comments were, "I can do that. That's the way it is now after President Trump." He got disbarred. The point being that the rule of law is of significance, that there's a certain candor, way that are things are supposed to be governed that may not apply in politics, but the rule of law is a place where it is supposed to be, and when followed, creates the freedom that we're talking about. But there's some other things that also are worthwhile to bring up. I couldn't help but to notice that there are several sheriff's departments that are going public, police departments, police agencies that are stating publicly that they are not going to enforce Governor Whitmer's order. If I don't know, I mean, whether you like the order or not, the idea that the police that can accept the stupid answer that I'm just following orders, that's what they do. They follow orders. They don't interpret orders. They don't have the discretion to do so. Or the idea that they are taking the discretion to decide what laws they're going to enforce or not enforce, absent if it's the law, if the orders are issued by the, and there's no, nothing that sets it aside, that says it's invalid. That's the rule of law. And when sheriffs start saying they are not going to follow the rule of law, I can tell you a time that I'm very familiar with when this happened. After the MMA passed, none of these sheriffs, none of these law enforcement followed the law. There was protections. They ignored them. They arrested, they raided, they felonized, they pointed guns at, they shot dogs, they took forfeiture. Not following the law is a scary premise. When the law enforcement agencies are doing what they want to do, the rule of law has no meaning. They are not supposed to have that discretion because then they use it nefariously and there's no standard. So, and then of course, as our guests will tell us, I think today, the barber who opened up his shop again, which is against the plain language of the, alleges the plain language of the executive order, opened up his shop, was taken to court on an injunction, and the judge over there did not find in favor of the state, found that he could continue to operate. And as the story, as we'll hear from Attorney Kallman, what ultimately happened is they revoked his license. They revoked
it. They summary suspended it. It's a summary suspension.
Right. And the point being, he can explain this a little bit more, but Lara obviously is in charge of issuing licenses for medical marijuana, not lawyers, but other businesses. And they give out like 1 million licenses a year, one of which they manage the barber hair industry, whatever. And they issued a summary suspension. Now, I've represented people in licensing issues in the past, and there's a certain threshold of fact findings that have to exist in order to do a summary suspension, where they take your license first and then you got to get it back afterwards. But what we have here, which is unique, I think, is the finding in a court of law that there was not enough evidence to enjoin the barber. And then with those facts, those findings, that court of law making that particular finding, his license was summarily suspended, so he couldn't operate. And I mention this because there's some concepts that are also part of the rule of law, which are notice, an opportunity to be heard, a hearing, maybe even a neutral and detached judiciary officer of some kind. I don't know that was even contemplated here. And that is troubling because that's not the rule of law that we know. The idea that someone would have a license and not have an opportunity to be heard after being exonerated in a court, essentially, is also a strange set of facts. And in a way, certainly what an act by the Lara that I question the legal authority. But it's a strange world that we are living in right now. I can't tell you that as a lawyer, and exclusively from the lawyer's perspective, that the way things are going right now, provides a lot of confidence for things in our rule of law. But I want to quote my friend Jeff Frazier, and I maybe paraphrase this a little bit and apply it differently. But the rule of law, by definition, has meaning only when it is applied equally and to all. And just like the judicial system, the jury system, it only works if people believe in it. And I just, we're in a very strange time, and I think a lot of people have different concerns about how this is going forward. And it may be political, it may be, not political, but I say from a perspective of a lawyer, we cannot start allowing as the norm or accepting the idea that the rule of law is not important. And finally, just to close, many people may not know this, but there was a vote recently in the Senate of the United States whereby one vote short, missing by one vote, the legislation did not pass into law as a rider to the Patriot Act, which while all this is going on, I sound like I got a tin hat on now, but while all this is going on, the Senate convened and was passing the Patriot Act, tracking United States citizens. And one of the things that was tried to add to this, which did not get added, they didn't have enough votes, was that that the government would be able to access individuals' web browsers without a search warrant, So this would be disconcerting. And in light of all that's going on and the challenges of the rule of law, let's not lose sight of the general principles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and some of those ideas that have slowly been eradicated. And oftentimes during disasters and emergencies, our civil liberties are put in jeopardy. And the point I want to make tonight is that the rule of law is important and our civil liberties are even more important. And let's not start sacrificing those under any circumstances. This is not a political statement. That's my rant. I did it kind of on time. I think we take a break and get...
Good, Michael. That was like the shortest rant ever.
All right, appreciate that. I hope it made some sense. I'm calling. We're taking a break, whether it's time or not. How's that?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time for a break, and then we'll come back and we'll have our special guest.
Excellent.
Hopefully.
All right.
Yep, we certainly will. So a quick break, and then we're ready to rock.
Excellent. You listen to Planet Green Trees, episode number 464, The Barber of Seville.
Or shut.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.
Now's the time to pull it out.
Okay, so our next guest, our next speaker is Anquinette Sarfo. Everybody knows her as Q, of course. Many of us welcomed her into our homes for many years. She was the Channel 2 Fox News newscaster in the morning. I watched her for years. I felt like she was a friend before I even knew her. Following her MS diagnosis, she's led a very public campaign advocating for the use of medical marijuana in the treatment of MS. And she's a tireless leader, and she's one of the people that we can really thank for the passage of Prop 1. So here we go, my friend Q. Unmute your mic, Q.
Okay, here we go. Is that better? Take two? All right, perfect. Thank you, everybody. Happy Digital Hash Bash, everybody, and thank you for joining the party from home. Today, while we celebrate legalization and take a puff of appreciation for the men and women who spent the last 50 years getting us to this moment, we must recognize that their work and our work is far from finished. A few months ago, I had a multiple sclerosis relapse and I passed out and possibly had a seizure. I want to thank the Farmington Hills Fire Department and the EMS workers who helped me that day. My doctor later prescribed me a medication, one that costs $1,200 a month, and that is with insurance. So guess what? That prescription is still at the pharmacy. But what my doctor didn't tell me is that some patients who are having issues such as mine were seeing results with cannabis, which would cost me about $100 a month if I went with an option like this, which is full extract cannabis oil. He couldn't tell me that even if that was too expensive, I could just grow it myself like this. This is Michigan grown hemp, and I can make the extract myself. My doctor can't give me and patients like me all of their options. Cannabis education is still being censored in the medical community. We must end this, and we really have to put the medical back in medical marijuana. I treat my mother's diabetes and arthritis with cannabis, and it is working. Yet she and so many patients like her, elderly patients, are terrified to tell their doctors. How is this healthcare? It's not. And we can't stop with cannabis. Legalization actually starts with cannabis. This magic mushroom also grows naturally. Cultures have used them safely for centuries. Researchers have been studying them for conditions like depression, Alzheimer's disease, and addiction for decades. But they remain illegal. Why? It is time for us to decriminalize nature. DNA2.org is working on that, so please, please consider joining and supporting their efforts. And finally, let's not forget that people are still in jail and in prison for nonviolent marijuana offenses, and those who are released live in the shadow of records that should have been expunged by now. Michigan lost a champion in the expungement fight with the death of Representative Isaac Robinson last month from coronavirus. We have to fill the void that he left and finally get expungement law passed in Michigan and across the country. So hey, let's celebrate today and let's get back at it tomorrow. You can always find me on social media at Channel Q, and I'm really looking forward to letting you guys know about something I'm unveiling on 420. So I hope to see you then, and until then, let me grab my puff. Puff, puff, don't pass. Stay safe by staying at home, and I'll see you soon. Back to you guys, the Hash Pash crew, and thank you so much for doing this. This is fun, and the parking is so much better.
No, that's so awesome, Q. Thank you.
I wish there was thunderous applause. You deserve it.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Rick, why don't you tee up our next speaker?
Next year, this will be 10 times as big. Post your photo. Next thing, if you got a joint, now's the time to pull it out.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
All right, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. This is Planet Green Trees, episode number 464. We're called the Barber of Seville or Shiawasse. And that we reveal right now. We have our special guest, Kallman, who a little background, he's Lansing attorney, started his practice in 1982. He has had successful litigation presence in any area, including homeschooling, education law, family law, criminal law, church and state, constitutional law, and administrative law. Every case at every level of the Michigan court system, Supreme Court, is also litigation of federal court and appeals of the United States Court of Appeals. Graduated from Williams and school, goes to school, college, his bachelor's of arts degree, was a forward on scholarship on the basketball team for both schools. You still got your ups? You can still get up a little bit?
That was my thinner days, man.
Good. Then obtained his Juris Doctorate from Thomas M. Cooley School of Law in 1982. Please welcome Attorney David Kallman.
Thanks. Glad to be on.
Hello.
David, we're glad to have you. This topic is fascinating to me for a lot of reasons. I know that it's gotten a lot of the view of it may be politically charged, but I like it from a lawyer's perspective because it's fascinating to me. My whole rant was about how important the rule of law is. We have rules, they're supposed to be enforced. And in the middle of all of this, your client, who was a barber licensed with the state of Michigan, in the middle of the executive order and not being one of the shops that could open up, if I understand things, open up his shop. Is that right?
That's right. May 4th, he came to the conclusion he had to do something. His bills are piling up. He needed to put food on the table and he needed to work. And so he just opened up his shop, and it's been a week and a half now. And of course, it's been a firestorm for him ever since.
And you know, I think it's fair to say that everybody is being affected by this particular lockdown differently. Some people are handling it well, others are not. You know, some people have their businesses may be essential and they may be operating well, some are not. And I think what's most important is that the discourse about the topic should take place at the very minimum. You know, at the very, you know, and nobody should take issue with it. We should be discussing how we're going to get through this, and what it's going to look like on the other side. So after he's open for what I said, a very couple days, maybe a verified complaint in support of an emergency motion for temporary restraining order was filed in the jurisdiction of Shiawasse County, as we discussed in front of Judge Stewart, by the Attorney General's office. And in short, the complaint sets forth that there's imminent danger to the health or lives of individuals existing in the state, and the order itself by the governor is to prevent that, and essentially concludes or makes the argument that there is a public health issue here and the order's not being followed, and therefore the state argues that Mr. Mankey's viability to operate should no longer go on, and he should be enjoined or restrained from operating, something to that effect. Is that fair?
Yes.
You were in, and then there was a court proceeding because this is an emergency, so they got it. And was it ex parte that it was ordered to shut down, and then you had to argue to keep it open or not, or did they just schedule an immediate hearing?
Sorry, I lost my audio for a second. Yeah, the judge, it was an ex parte request for a TRO, you know, a temporary restraining order, that would have resulted, if the judge had granted it, in Mr. Mankey's shop being shut down. And of course, we were aware that they were going to be doing this and trying this, so we had contacted the court, obviously to let them know. I didn't talk to the judge, but to his staff, that you know, we opposed this, that we wanted to have a full hearing, and however the judge was intending to handle it, that we would like to have a hearing. Then later on Monday, that afternoon, Judge Stewart issued an opinion and denied the TRO. And, you know, it's interesting. We keep hearing about, in fact, just today I heard Governor Whitmer again, oh, these protesters are coming to the Capitol. It was like a couple hundred people, whatever it was. Or people are going to Mr. Mankey's barbershop, and that this is going to spread the virus far and wide. And now I'm going to have to extend my orders and keep people locked down longer because a few hundred people were at a barbershop or at the Capitol. When she was asked today, and I was asking this of reporters all day yesterday when I was talking to them, you know, why doesn't somebody ask the governor What proof do you have that this is happening? What proof do you have that there's been one coronavirus case because of these few meetings that have gone on? So today a reporter asked her, and she admitted that she doesn't have any proof, that that's just her feeling about it, that, you know, that's kind of what she thinks might happen. So if you look at that complaint, and I know you have a copy of it, Mike, it's full of just conclusory statements. There's no facts to it.
Right.
I mean, the meat of their complaint is this. Governor Whitmer, issued an order, an executive order, and if you don't follow it, we're coming after you. I mean, that's basically it. I don't know what happened to all the science and data that she keeps talking about because it's not in this complaint. And the judge saw right through it. And he said he found no imminent danger. And I think I sent you the opinion, too, that he wrote, that, he found no imminent danger or an emergency and denied their motion. So that's what happened on Monday. Then on Wednesday, we had a status conference. The Attorney General's office said they now wanted to have an emergency hearing on a preliminary injunction, another type of injunction you're familiar with.
Sure.
And they needed an emergency hearing for that. And they wanted to have it right away. And the judge said, look, I've already ruled that there's no emergency. Do you have anything new for me? They didn't. And so he said, no, there's no emergency. We'll handle this the normal way. They filed their brief and paperwork yesterday. The judge gave us till next Friday to file our briefs in response to them. And then he's going to set a hearing date after that. So that's what's going on in that case. Then what's happened and has caused all the uproar here in the last couple of days is the next day on Tuesday, after Judge Stewart issued his opinion, denied their request to shut Mr. Mankey down, the state weaponized LARA, the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Department. And they have literally done that. They have weaponized LARA against a political person that opposes them politically, like Mr. Mankey. And they summarily suspended his Barber license with absolutely nothing other than the claim of maybe he might cause somebody to get coronavirus. And you didn't follow the governor's executive order. And the irony of ironies, argued that because of this cease and desist order that Judge Stewart just ruled they could not enforce, they put this in the pleadings to suspend his license that he refused to comply with the very order the judge said he did not have to comply with. I mean, this is just outrageous. And, as soon as our client, right now they've issued the order, suspending his license without a hearing, with no notice, no nothing. And now, until he's served with that order, he can keep operating. He's been cutting hair the last 2 days because he has not been served with the order.
Was there a complaint? I mean, I know
they filed. LARA did their own complaint. Yeah. And the agency itself, I guess, kind of on their own motion, just did this.
Did they serve him with the complaint before they?
No, nothing. That's my point. It's like a banana republic. It's just unbelievable to me.
This is one of the unacceptable because amongst the things that we should expect in any hearing, no matter how much you hate the person, whether you love him, hate her, him, whatever, there is due process. It's notice, no notice, right to a
right to be heard.
Right to be heard. And hopefully a neutral and detached someone from a judiciary that's going to make a decision that's not tied to one of the parties. This was a unilateral act by the executive branch in a sense after a court made a finding that there was no facts to support wrongdoing.
Absolutely. It's just outrageous. It really is.
We're living in weird times. I mean, it goes both ways. I was mentioning before the executive orders. It's not the norm. It's not the thing. People, you got the legislature. They're supposed to make the laws. But what does what's your you got some issues that are not going to be you're not going to get very far with I guess when you have a right to a hearing, an administrative law judge to get
and actually, under the statute, we have the right to an immediate hearing, like right away. So that's good. They can't drag this out for weeks or months. So we'll get a hearing if they do serve him. And then that administrative judge is required to give an immediate ruling. So they can't sit on it. They have to rule right away. And if they rule against us, remember, we're still within the agency that's controlled by the governor. These people, they get their paychecks from the governor, So, I think you can guess how neutral a hearing that's going to be. But assuming this ALJ rules against us, then we have the right to go immediately file an injunctive relief in the circuit court, and we'll be back in front of Judge Stewart because he's the only circuit judge in Shiawasse County. It's just.
And it's one of the unique things on that appeal. It's one of the few circumstances that a lawyer can forum shop, quote unquote, because you could take a jurisdiction of Ingham County, right?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you could go to Ingham, but obviously, our client's in Shiawasse, and Judge Stewart knows the case. We're going to file there.
So, just for the listeners that may not understand, we're talking about the administrative function of LARA that issues licenses. I think I've heard them say they issue maybe 1 million licenses a year. I mentioned earlier that the cannabis community was delighted when LARA took over the handling of the issuance of licenses from the board, which incidentally was removed as a thing by an executive order. Everyone liked it at that time. Some people don't like other executive orders. But what I thought was interesting here is that the impact ultimately of operating there hasn't been any. He's still open and operating, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And is his business booming? There's a lot of support in the community?
Within a day of his opening up, he worked, he told me all last week, he was coming in at 9 a.m. and working till 1 a.m. the next day. There were so many people coming. He said, he told me today that he's had people come in from Los Angeles, Louisiana, from all over the country, literally, all over the Midwest, driving hours to come to him to get a haircut. The response has been overwhelming that, look, he's just trying to make a living so he can pay his bills. And I guess here's the most frustrating thing to me about this, Mike. What was the mantra we heard 2 months ago when all this started? We have to shut down. We have to do this to save lives, right? And everybody pretty much bought into it. A few people didn't, but I did. Most people did. And what were we told? Got to flatten the curve, right? Got to flatten the curve. We heard that over and over and over till the cases are not rising. Then what's the second thing? We had to do that so that our hospitals would not be overrun and doctors and nurses would not be, pushed to the max and not be able to care for all the patients. We were given numbers. 2 million people are going to die. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people in the hospitals. All right. So what happened? We shut down. Now it's 2 months later. What's happened? The curve is flattened. Everybody agrees. Nobody can argue that data. That's science. It's flattened. Nobody can argue our hospitals are not overrun. Hospitals are laying off people because they're not being allowed to do the other surgeries and the procedures that they would normally do. And so what's the rationale now? We're going to, you can't come back to work until we've, eradicated coronavirus. Well, I guess we've got our monarchy for the next 2 years or 6 years, however long Governor Whitmer's in office. That's never going to happen.
I know.
So there comes a point of, look, we cannot destroy our economy. We cannot destroy people in other ways. I've just been reading some statistics here recently of the number of people who are going to die from medical procedures that have been put off or not given or treatments. Cancer patients, on and on. The collateral from this, Harvard put out a study that I just saw recently. For every 1 point the unemployment rate goes up, it translates into thousands of deaths from homicide, suicide, domestic violence, all the ramifications of that. And those numbers dwarf what's going on with coronavirus. So the point here is not that coronavirus isn't serious, that we shouldn't be safe and be serious about it, practice good safety measures and all of that. But you can't have the cure be worse than the disease itself. And when you've got that many more people are going to die, that many more people who are losing their jobs that are never going to come back, there comes a tipping point, and we're frankly past that tipping point. And I think the people sense it, and that's why you're seeing what's happening right now, and that's why you see the groundswell of support for Carl, is because people get it. Enough's enough. It's not discounting the seriousness of this pandemic at all. It's not saying that anybody wants anybody to die from this. Of course not. but we can't destroy ourselves in the name of the coronavirus. This is ridiculous.
Dave, I do have a question from one of the listeners on Facebook. The question is that they were curious as to whether Carl had planned to, well, the first part is to claim all that revenue, which that's neither here nor there. But the other question was, or have documentation for contact tracing of those he's provided services to.
Wow. If I hear contact tracing one more time, I mean, seriously, we're going to contact trace tens of thousands of people. I mean, we already know that there's a huge amount of people who have had the coronavirus and had no symptoms or very mild symptoms. And they're finding this out in study after study all over the country. It's a very high percentage. New York City, over 20% of the people have had coronavirus. Okay. That's almost 3 million people. Tell me, how are you going to contact trace 3 million people? This is silliness. This is just shifting the goalposts now, since the curve has been flattened, since the hospitals are not being overrun. Well, now we got to come up with some other reason to keep all these draconian, controls in place. Well, we better contact trace, and let alone the civil liberties aspects of all of that. I mean, I'd like to know where all my liberal friends are on this. Who would be, you would think, would abhor this kind of thing.
Well, I think it's interesting. I was going to ask you why. First of all, these issues have created divide. I think even in the discourse amongst bubbles that people live in. You know what I mean? Because, and it's at least the ones that I saw, because I see it from a lawyer's perspective, and I do see it from a civil liberties perspective. I'm not going and violating, I'm not, like that, but I recognize that where we are right now, we're at the end of it, or we should be at the end of it. And I realize the problems that exist going forward. And I have a very difficult time trusting the government to get us there. And if they don't act soon, we're going to be in a much worse place, and we cannot rely on them for anything that's going to be for the right reasons. But one of the questions might be, and I do think I do think the divide, unfortunately, deals with some of the total divide of our country, and I think it plays itself out in that way. And I don't think it's fair that we can't have some discussion about between the two groups of alternatives to what's taking place. That should be the bare minimum of what we're doing.
Without a doubt.
But if you had to put your finger on it, because it's really global, it's all speculative, but what is the motivation? Why would, I understand there's power and let me speculate myself, and you tell me what you're thinking. I would think, there's two, I think two reasons. You tell me, what is your reason that they would want to, that you think that the governor would be doing this? It's a motivation. If it's not,
Mike, I've been asked that a number of times. I'm not a mind reader. I don't question her good intentions. I don't question that she is fearful of this pandemic and what it could potentially do. I don't question any of that. My point is that we've been given gloom and doom for the last 2 months, and it's not panned out. Okay. And I don't believe our constitutional rights can be trampled upon and thrown out just because there's an illness running around. Okay. We still have our constitutional rights. We are still entitled under the federal and our state constitution to have a representative form of government, not one person acting as the legislature and the governor, because that's what we have right now. And I'll tell you, it concerns me when I see the governor very vindictively standing up. These are not suggestions. These are the law. You guys better do what I say or else. I'm telling you, that's scary stuff to me. And I'm coming from the conservative Republican side. That is trampling on our constitutional rights. Let me tell you, Mike, one of the things, the third thing in this license case against Carl, they put in, well, he's charged with some crimes, and so therefore his license has to be suspended. He's been charged. Okay? Whatever happened to the constitutional right of innocent until proven guilty? I guess Governor Whitmer and Attorney General Nessel don't believe in it anymore. And then think about this for a minute. How come he's charged? Why is he charged with crimes? Attorney General Nessel and the governor brought the criminal charges against him. They're the ones who've created the charges. And then they turn around and they look at their agency and go, oh, hey, look over here. He's been charged. Oh, yeah, we did it. But take a look at it. He's charged. He hasn't had his day in court. use that as a reason to suspend his license. I'm telling you, this is banana republic stuff.
Just to add to the
outrageous.
To add to the irony, if the question was asked rhetorically, what was he doing wrong? He was cutting hair as his license would do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Do they have one person who's saying he did a bad job? You know, he chopped off my ear or something. I mean, come on. This is a joke.
Does he have other people working for him, and did they have their license effectuated?
No, he has other people that work, you know, with him. He rents space, but they're not coming in. They're afraid, you know, that they're going to have the state coming after them like they are coming after Carl.
And for our listeners, I want to make this point before. Usually, there are circumstances where the licensing agency will act without a hearing.
Of course, we have to have that. Yes,
but they are when there is a conviction, like you know, they have to report it. Like lawyers have to report convictions. I've represented physicians who've been convicted of crimes. They will take away their license first, and you have to work to get it back. But but what are some other scenarios? I was trying to think of some.
Well, think about a daycare license. I had a case like this. A lady had a daycare license, and her boyfriend moved in, and he was on the sex offender registry. Well, guess what? The state came in properly and said, well, we're taking your license until we get to the bottom of this. Okay. Medical licenses, a doctor, you know, is performing operations or treatments that are outside his, you know, abilities, or that are quackery or things like that. You know, of course, you can act quickly. There are situations, and that's what these laws have been used for in the past. They've not been weaponized to be used against political opponents like they're doing to Mr. Mankey. That's the scary part of this. And everybody across the board should be very, very concerned about this. I don't care who you are or what your cause is or anything else. You should be worried about this because they can turn this on you tomorrow.
It does seem vindictive, and they do seem to be picking on him. I would say
it's petty. It's petty. And it's a slap at Judge Stewart. I mean, he already ruled there's no emergency. So they're taking his license because there's an emergency? Come on.
That's the other problem. The fact that they got their day in court and they didn't and then retaliated. That's not supposed to be the way. That's not the rule of law. That's not. No,
I agree, Mike. 100%. Yep.
Kind of disconcerting. So I was going to speculate. You know, let's get to. I want to get everyone else to ask some questions or whatnot. You know, Jim, I think, was commenting on the data. I think he was taking issue with some of even the data that's being presented by the data collection. Jim, maybe you want to tell that, but I was going to throw out there, if I had to speculate, again, I'm not a mind reader, but it could be purely political, and that the longer it goes on, the worse it looks for the election at the time. And, you know, the parties are hunkered down in these two things, and, you know, the economy in November will dictate, you know, who wins. That's one theory. And I think the other one would be that a lot of the, you know, no governor wants to be the one that makes the decision that something, that if there is something tragic, if, you know, children start being affected that nobody thinks they are, or, you know, there's some other reverb or rebound of this and it just gets worse and hospitals become, as, you know, I think those are the two factors that wait. But I don't know. It could, you know, it's difficult. You know, it's weird. I think a lot of times when we're in crisis, citizens look to leadership. You know, they want leadership. They want to be led. They want to have someone have the answers and stuff. And
but you know, we can't let fear make our decisions for us. We can't let speculation. Well, it might be spreading the coronavirus. Look, everybody's been telling us from Dr. Fauci on down since this started that there was going to be a drop and probably a lull over the summer. Then it's probably going to come back come wintertime and things like that. Look, you know, we have a lot better treatments now. We have a lot of other things going on. They say they're working on the vaccine. We can't. What do you think our economy is going to look like if we're here next spring and still locked down? There will be no economy. It's gone. Everybody's jobs are gone. And we're in, you know, our society is over, you know, and we're totally controlled by the government at that point. We cannot let that happen, no matter how serious. And this is serious, you know, this illness is. We are finding ways to deal with it. We are doing the social distancing, all these other things. 98% of us are doing it, you know. We can't destroy ourselves because of fear.
And that's exactly just to kind of echo what you're saying, David. There have been a lot of the same types of sentiments from the Capitol during the discussions today. So you know, it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jamie, Rick, Steve, Jim, you guys want to ask any questions of our special guest here? Has been so kind with his time and information.
Yeah, he's got to go on a call at 9, I believe, don't you, David?
Well, I've got they're going to be a little bit. I've got about 5 more minutes. If it's starting at 9:15, and I've got to do a few things. That's why I said 9. But I can go about 5 more minutes. That'd be okay.
Jamie, Jim, Rick, Steve.
I got nothing.
Okay.
Sorry, come on, man. You got to have something.
I'm still thinking.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. So, and this may have already been discussed, but I understand that the tickets and things that the Barber was receiving, the patrons paid for.
Well, no, because this is a little confusion in what's been reported. He was given tickets, but they're not tickets like running a stop sign ticket or something like that.
Oh, okay.
These are tickets that are for criminal misdemeanors. So think of it like this. If somebody is driving drunk and they're over the limit and they get pulled over, they receive a ticket, but it's not like, oh, I just go pay my ticket and I'm done. It's a criminal charge and you got to go to court and you got to deal with it.
Gotcha.
So you see the difference. If you get a speeding ticket, you go pay your fine, you're done, okay? That's not what this is. These are criminal charges, and he has to answer for them. There's a court hearing on June 23rd on those charges.
Well, maybe we can have you back and discuss the outcome.
Sure.
And see how that goes.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
And we can hear about how the jury trial in that case goes via Zoom, maybe. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, I sure hope not. No way, man.
Maybe a bench trial would be better with Judge Stewart. Just I know it won't be. That'll probably be in the district court. The misdemeanor ticket.
Yeah, it'd be district court. Yeah, so it'd be a different judge. Yeah.
But I get the feeling that it's a popularity kind. Judges rule popularly, jurisdictionally sometimes.
Sure.
Your venue is it's a unique jurisdiction. Shiawasse. I've been out there. I know it's very conservative, religious. My impression. They're law abiding.
Very much so.
I remember standing in front and trying to pick a jury in a resisting and obstructing case. You're probably very familiar with it because it was right after the Marino case with that added. You can resist an arrest if you're in a constitutionally protected area.
Right.
So I stand in front of the jury. I go, by a showing of hands, can anyone think of a reason why they would disobey a police order? Not one hand went up. Not one hand. The entire jury pool was like, but I said, what do you mean? You in the back, I noticed like everyone else, you didn't raise your hand. How come? They're like, well, it's like the authority and, like the police and the, the church. And, I know what she was saying, but but I'm saying that knowing that, it seems strange that this is the, Well,
let me just make one last point if I could. I guess what concerns me here too is that these executive orders are very inconsistent. I mean, how is it that Lowe's, Menards, takeout restaurants, all kinds of places that you can go to right now, GM can reopen now. And I'm all for that. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But all those places are opening and they're functioning. How are they doing it? Because they physical distance themselves. They wear the masks. They do all the cleansing stuff they have to do. Well, what is the difference between that and your local mechanic or Carl having his barber shop or whoever? There is no difference. And so that's the problem with these executive orders. It allows the governor to pick winners and losers. If you're a favored business, you get to open. If you're an unfavored business, you'd better not open or we're going to squash you. And I think that's what's really rubbing people the wrong way. That's the basic unfairness of all of this. And it's either, look, if they can open, why can't Carl open and do it safely and do it appropriately? He should be allowed to do that. And that's why I think ultimately we're going to win this case on all fronts.
Well, you've made a number of tremendous points. I appreciate the discourse. As I say, the world needs more lawyers.
Absolutely.
Good to talk to a fellow bar member, and I appreciate all you do, David, and coming on the show. Very interesting topic, and we're going to be following this and trying to make sure that the rule of law is followed in the state and the country.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been great to meet you all.
Thank you, David. Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was David.
So with that, maybe we should just go to break.
Sure.
Yes.
Very good. Let's go to a break. You listen to Planet Green Trees, and we will be right back.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2020 Digital Hash Bash broadcast, hosted by Jamie Lowell. Jamie, you're out there, aren't you?
I'm here, hosted by all of us. I'm not taking all the credit, that's for sure.
Nope. A whole big gang of us. I'd like to introduce our next guest speaker here. BDT Smoke Shop opened in 1973. They're the #1 head shop in the Southeast Michigan for more than a dozen years. This gentleman is the face of BDT Smoke Shop, but he's so much more, and I hope he gets a chance to explain that. Let me introduce Mr. Curtis Gore.
I hear a bit of an echo.
Hey, Curtis.
My intro was so good, he didn't feel the need to stay around to say anything. Awesome!
No, unfortunately, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can, Curtis. Yay! Thank you.
Oh, boy. Poor internet connection, I think.
All
just as we thought things were going well.
You're doing great. We can see you and hear.
I could hear the intro.
We can hear you and see you. Keep going.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's a pleasure to be on our first ever virtual Hash Bash over Skype. This has been fantastic. I think it's time to have a little fun. Can you still see me?
Mm-hmm. So there you go.
We got something big going on in the background here. Kind of chilling things out here at the Hazel Park BDTs. Well, it's obviously been a tough time for all of us. But we're going to do our best getting through.
You know, Curtis, it's difficult to know what is an essential service and what isn't. How's BDTs doing with this whole situation? Are you an essential service? Are you able to service customers?
No, we are, all our stores are shut down right now. But fortunately, with our gas and chemical company, Bumblebee Gas and Extraction, we've been actually servicing the community by providing isopropyl alcohol and non-denatured alcohol and actually turning that into a sanitizer. And we're still
so awesome.
Curtis, we may have lost you.
Aww.
That's a shame. If you notice Curtis's background, those of us who can still see him on freeze frame, he's at the Marijuana Museum, which is existing in Hazel Park. Jamie Lowell's been there before. That happens to be a great rack of magazines and other memorabilia, not just from Cheech and Chong, but other remnants of the era. It's quite an impressive place, Jamie.
Yeah, we did a Jazz Cabbage Cafe broadcast from there.
Sure did.
Helped to show it off and had a really great lineup of people there participating.
Yeah. That hat he was wearing itself deserves a story. That was pretty awesome. And a fog machine for the Hash Bash show? That's great.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
This is Amanda Joslin reporting live with PGT TV. We are at the Lansing State Capitol today, and as you can see behind me, we have a group of protesters, and they're protesting Governor Whitmer's stay-at-home order. So we are here as a neutral party. We're just going to come on through here and check out why people are here and what they've got to say to the governor. We are about ready to storm the Capitol. As you can see, we've got a group formed out here, and we're on the Capitol steps right now, and we're making our way across and interviewing folks to find out why they're here and what message they'd like to send to Governor Whitmer. We are here with one of the protesters today, and what we'd like to find out is, first of all, what's your name?
My name is Rob, sorry. My friends call me Duckman.
Duckman. So what brings you here today with your furry little friend?
We're absolutely tired of watching friends that own businesses unable to open business and operate because they're deemed non-essential by Governor Whitmer, and she needs to reopen. If we can all go to Walmart, we can all go to small businesses and practice social distancing safely.
So how has this affected you personally as, of course, the stay-at-home orders have affected various...
Well, I was not allowed to go to my house in Upper Michigan to check on my property and pay my taxes and get my lawn and stuff in order, So that was one way I was affected, but I'm more affected watching friends struggle because they're down 40 to 60% business-wise where they were last year this time. And they're essential. They're automotive repair shops because nobody's driving. Nobody's going out, and a lot of people don't have income. They're waiting on unemployment. They're not going back to work. They've been furloughed or laid off or just let go completely because the business has gone under. And what's really sad is I know so many people that would love to be out here protesting, but they own businesses, and they're afraid of being boycotted by people that are like, stay at home, live in fear, don't go outside.
That's interesting. That's interesting that you say that. So, Pokemon, tell us why you're here today and what you would like to say to Governor Whitmer and or the people of Michigan.
This is not the America that I was taught about in school, where the government can take over every company and tell everyone what they can and can't do. I want the America that I was taught about in school.
And how far did you drive to get here? Where are you from?
About an hour and a half.
Okay, great. And I noticed you're packing some heat today, and I know for one, I feel a little bit safer knowing Pokemon is packing some heat.
My Pokemon powers are stronger than bullets anyway.
Thank you so much. PGT TV here, and we're at the Lansing State Capitol talking with some folks here that are unsatisfied with Governor Whitmer's stay-home orders and more. So, what's your name, sir?
Jay.
And Jay, where do you hail from?
South Genesee County.
Okay, and why are you here today?
Well, I'm here because I saw the argument going on that this order isn't actually lawful because of the fact that the legislature didn't back it when it expired. Mainly, really. And my small business is failing over this. If it goes on much longer, we don't have welfare, we don't have unemployment, anything like that. So it really leaves us in a bad position, and I think that people need better answers to the way that this has been handled. The state response to this, quote, pandemic, it's questionable, and I think there has to be a public quorum.
Hey there, we're here with Rev Pete, and we'd like to hear a couple of words from him as to why are you here at the Capitol today?
We have a Constitution here in the United States. We have a Constitution here in the state of Michigan, and these arbitrary orders are unconstitutional. That's about the summation of why I'm here.
So tell me a little bit about the your mask and your hat in reference to maybe a little history.
Well, the fact of the matter is that I object to the idea that I'm being forced to wear a mask. So I actually made this mask in protest, because if you are going to tell me I have to wear a mask, I'll wear a freaking mask. I'll give you a mask. You want a mask? I got a mask for you, right? This is the United States. We don't have a dictator here in the state of Michigan. She seems to think that she is in a position to be that dictator. We, the people, are here to say she's wrong. And civil disobedience is a tenet of the Constitution of the United States of America. When a law becomes unconstitutional, it is an American patriot's duty to defy that law, not to comply.
No? Okay. If there was one message that you would like to communicate to the governor herself, what would that be?
Compromise. I think that we can open up safely, and we can meet halfway.
It makes no sense. She has too many inane bans that have nothing to do with public health safety. That's why I'm here today.
Hey folks, it's Amanda with PGT TV, and we're here at the Capitol where there are protesters protesting Governor Whitmer's stay-home order. And as far as the police presence, we don't see an overwhelming amount. However, there are a few. We see some over here to the left-hand side of me. There's a few to the right, and then there's some over to the, I'd say maybe 3 o'clock region. But other than that, everything seems to be extremely cordial. There are some police presence behind the Capitol doors to just secure the entrance. No one is able to get in or out. The crowds are fairly light today, but we have received a lot of folks that are very open and willing to have a conversation about the reasons they're here and any messages they may have for the governor. Stay tuned, and we're going to be broadcasting live tonight, 8 o'clock.
And now back to more Planet Green Trees.
All righty, we are back. Thank you for staying with us, and watching Planet Green Trees. Appreciate the commentary we see on the side here, but we are now going to turn to Amanda Joslin, who will forever be now referred to as Planet Green Trees #1 reporter. You may have seen the segment that was videoed earlier where she was at the Capitol today, social distancing and interviewing people to try to understand what was going on there today. And she's now going to report on that. Please welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. We went over to the Capitol today. It was their third protest, and we were there a little bit later because there was quite a bit of rain earlier on the day. So there was probably a couple of dozen folks there when we arrived. There was a pretty decent, not a huge presence of police. Everybody seemed to be fine and peaceful. And we got a great group of people to talk to, just to kind of understand a little bit more about why they felt it necessary to go and how this pandemic has, and stay-at-home order specifically, has affected them, whether it be that they're a small business or whether it be that they've had to put off surgeries, just different things like that. And it was there were a mix of both sides. There was a side that was pro stay at home, and there was a side that was let's go back to work. But everyone that we spoke to was very respectful, and we were really just there to kind of get a feel for what was out there.
It seemed like it lasted all day. I saw some live footage via one of the news stations, then I saw a couple live feeds on people's Facebook. But it seemed like there was a lot of traffic going by. It wasn't clogged like the couple rallies ago, a lot of horn honking. How many people would you estimate were out in front? We could kind of see it from the video footage that you guys shot, but how many people would you say were at the, generally speaking?
While we were there, Michael, we got there after the rain kind of stopped. So maybe about 12:30, and there were, I would say, about 100 people total, but that was including law enforcement and things like that. So 100 people total. There were still people driving around honking and things, but the main crowd was up closer toward the Capitol. There were a couple of folks talking on the loudspeakers and such. And it was not as a big of a turnout as what we've seen in the previous protests, partially because of the thunderstorms, I believe. But while I was there, there wasn't any, we didn't see any swastikas or anything like that.
What about arrests? Were there any arrests? I did see there was one scuffle that appeared, and someone seemed to either cause a fight or offend somebody and got kind of beat up a little bit and then ran away. Was there any arrests?
I did not see any. I can't speak to exactly what happened at that particular incident. I think I know what you're referencing. Somebody did create a little bit of a ruckus. And so turned out that he was ejected. And I don't know that he was arrested. I think he was just escorted off by another one of the protesters. I don't believe the police got involved.
Well, it was interesting. I don't know how I feel about this. And I'm curious to hear what Rick and Jamie have to say. There's some, there's a bunch of, so I don't know where I read it, and maybe one of the major, the Detroit News, a few press, that they were discussing how there was a number of tweets on the social media that were very, very threatening, like beyond just normally statements. They had a sensibility equivalent to like, there's a bomb in the school, or there's a shooter on his way over there. Not that severe, I would say, but certainly, yeah, they were talking
close. Yeah.
They said, fit her for a noose. I hope she catches a bullet. Let's direct a shotgun at her. That's
way over the line.
I mean, no kid in high school could get away with saying any of those things without ended up being in cuffs. No child in public school could ever say that. No.
That's unacceptable. With this, I saw actually there were a few children there. there it didn't seem to be violent at all, you guys. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just inexperienced in this whole thing, but
No, this was online. This was online, Amanda.
Okay, different subject. Okay, sorry.
These were comments that people were making online. I'm not.
I see.
Yeah, the Metro Times got access to 4 private chat rooms on Facebook from groups affiliated with this organization, and they had some very vile individual comments from members wishing the governor ill.
Oh wow.
And devising, various strategies to make that happen.
Yeah, there's no reason for that. No matter where you stand, that's out of line and unacceptable.
I'm not going to defend that behavior. It was bad. It was threatening and type of stuff that'll lead to an investigation. But in Amanda's, I'm not defending any of this. I'm just saying, I'm glad that none of that happened. I'm glad that there wasn't any shooting or whatnot. That would have been a disaster, just for the sake of what that would have led to and all that crazy stuff. I'm glad that it was de-escalated. And of course, in every movement, there are crazies, right? There's always going to be. Within the cannabis movement, there's crazies, right? And you're looking at all 5 of them right here. Just kidding.
Craziest.
But
groups are often defined by their most extreme members, and oftentimes guilt by association is true. You could have someone at your rally who's not even a part of your group, who then gives you a black eye, right? And oftentimes we see people labeled as plants or as operatives when we see someone going to a place and acting in a bombastic way just to draw attention to themselves, negative attention to themselves.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there may be some people that, I don't know. I think we probably covered it enough. I think it's a interesting time. And before we take on, besides Jamie Lowell's been very quiet, let's talk about the topic that Jamie.
Don Bailey. Talk about Don Bailey, Jamie.
Yeah, let's hear about Don Bailey.
Not on the
Take it away, Jamie.
Don Bailey. Someone's going to go off list and off the set list. It's going to be Jamie. Jamie's going to follow me in the key of E. Let's go. Just kidding. What was this article, Jamie, and what was describe a little bit?
Apparently, the guy from Sam, I forgot his name actually, and the guy we all know, Don Bailey, collaborated on an editorial to discuss about how evil cannabis continues to be, and they've got decades of experience of being around it, so they know. But the cool thing was they included their recognition of the fact that we did the digital hash bash and also the 420 broadcasts. So they basically acknowledged, what Green Trees did.
In fact, let me quote, I'm reading it right now from the letter, which was published in the Detroit News, quoting, "Even still, members of the pot industry and others with curbside access to their favorite brands were able to celebrate Hash Bash over a video conference earlier this month and then gathered again online for 420 festivities. Between the coughs, the clouds of smoke, and the paraphernalia glorifying the drug, one can't help but wonder what the impact will be on public health during this pandemic." And then he says, marijuana is not essential. Pretending it poses an inordinate danger to our state as we face down a powerful and devastating virus.
Of course, we
Who
did.
is this, Jasper?
Don Bailey, the guy from who's on the board.
Oh my gosh!
So we did that.
Something he would say.
So we did that, and we've been online all these times for the reason of the pandemic and staying at home and demonstrating.
And it's nice to know Don Bailey is listening in. So good evening, Don.
He may.
So what we demonstrated was a way to save lives. What the protesters have done.
Did.
And
Everybody take a toke for Don.
Has created a condition where people increase the risk of spreading the virus at this time.
Yeah, Don, we saved lives, buddy.
There's a fair argument that he might be biased and that he doesn't like the governor because she used her executive order to remove his.
And there could be a fair argument to be made that Don Bailey and the guy from Sam are both losers and are sore losers at that, because the guy from Sam, obviously they lost the election. We got legalization and Don Bailey got bounced from his position. So they probably have some
wrong, yeah.
Probably have some stuff in their craw that they're trying to get out, I think, right now. Some sour grapes, perhaps.
Let's make sure we were clear on the one important factor that he mentioned: Planet Green Trees, Jazz Cabbage, and malt, and the most significant cannabis and topic podcast by all those involved here were involved in. He was calling us out specifically.
He did not use the name Planet Green Trees or Jazz Cabbage, but he did say the Digital Hash Bash, which is Planet Green Trees, and the 420 broadcast, which the biggest 420 broadcast was our Jazz Cabbage broadcast. Yeah. So yeah.
So is he allowed to do that?
Oh yeah. Don Bailey has stalked my Facebook page for years, since 2017 or before.
Admitted it.
Jim Powers. Yeah, we had quite a hate relationship going on at the board, the licensing board, and in media. We would spar in the Detroit Free Press and the news and such. His removal from the board made things a lot better, but I knew he wasn't just going to disappear. I knew that he's a zealot. He really believes in what he's saying and what he's doing, and those type of people never really just fade away.
Well, let's just do this and hope that he doesn't have a condition come up in his life where he will then have to become a cannabis patient to treat some of his ailments.
I wish him well. I hope he has I hope he's happy and he has a safe life. But
he really believes this shit. I believe that 100%. So it's at least his intentions are to warn people of how evil cannabis are. I think he really believes.
Yeah. And if he was getting paid for it and he was doing it because of money and he sort of halfway was there, that would be despicable. But when you really truly believe in something and you advocate for what you believe in, it's an admirable quality. Even if I disagree with what he's advocating for, he works hard at this. Jamie and I, as he mentioned, have seen him in several different meetings across the state and heard of him being in others that we weren't at. He goes to local municipal meetings the same way that we do to convince local ordinance makers one way or the other.
Devil's lettuce.
The devil's lettuce.
That's right.
The Jazz Cabbage. It's bad stuff.
The Jazz Cabbage, you guys.
I remember reading some FOIA that we got where he referenced the Planet Green Trees show. How he even mentioned you, Rick. I can't remember, but it was I have to look back and see.
Rick Thompson's.
Don Bailey did have a bit of a hard on Rick.
We're talking shit at one of those.
I'm a culture personality is what I am. I'm the Rick Thompsons, like the Bob Marleys, or like the Pee Wee Hermans. It's probably closer to truth.
Did you have some confrontation with him, Rick, where he was on the board and some banter back and forth? Did that happen a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. That happened at several of the early meetings.
And I think when it came out that the caregivers were allowed to supply the marketplace, and we were going crazy about that, like, this is so hypocritical. I think he was commenting on that because he didn't like that at all. He was really upset about that because these were, the caregiving activity was the. He
believed every caregiver cheated. They all lied on their taxes. None of them were keeping just to their patients. Everybody was violating the rule, and they should just get rid of the whole program. That was Don's shit.
Other people in the department there used to like it when Rick would lay into Bailey a little bit.
Well, I gotta say, Rick, I think that's a little gem myself. I've seen some videos from back in the day where you've had a couple of things you mentioned up on the podium to get a little dig here and there.
Well, democracy is dispensed in 2-minute increments. It's really kind of a sad conversation that they'll spend a ton of time listening to experts from one thing or the other, but when the citizens actually queue up to give a speech, we have this ridiculous time frame that doesn't allow you to encapsulate your thoughts. So
they don't do that to the Michigan State Police, though.
Was he also the guy that threw out Dakota?
No, that would be Senator Rick Jones.
Rick Jones. Okay.
Who also
committee hearing.
Jim Powers knows and Jamie knows. Mr. Senator Jones and I had an ongoing feud also.
Well, he and Bailey are like peas and carrots, aren't they?
Yeah.
They
Oh, they're brothers?
They're definitely cut from a similar cloth.
Okay.
Law enforcement background.
My favorite
They've
hearing
seen each other
with
naked.
Rick was the SB 660 hearing. I think that was the best hearing ever. I mean, you had Rick's testimony, which was great. You had Randy Richardville getting up and walking out, and then you had Abel calling him a chicken.
Yeah. So I slam these guys with all this stuff. Richardville is flustered. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to respond to me. He's saying things. I'm beating him every time he says it. So he finally goes, recess, just slams his gavel down, recess. Everybody is shocked, stands up. He gets ready to leave. And from the back of the room, Matt Abel says, chicken. And Richardville turns around and says, I'll see you outside. Basically called Matt Abel out into the hallway. That was a memorable piece of testimony. And then when he came back, we continued to spar a little bit, but his soul wasn't in it anymore. He was done.
Tangle with Richardville a little bit on Let It Rip.
Yeah.
I
remember that too. Yeah.
I forgot about that. You and Deb, didn't you and Deb go on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Deb told me, don't hold back. She said, be rude, jump ahead. This isn't your traditional be polite deal. You got a short time, stomp all over them. And that's what I did, essentially, didn't I, Jim?
You did. You did a great job.
It was like the first match, and then we went down into his backyard in Monroe, and we had him tapping out during that.
Yeah, Michael was there that time. I didn't even have to speak hardly. Michael just went to town on him.
Please. By the way, we're joined by Paul Talinda, outstanding lawyer, brother in arms in the battle of the lawyers go through.
Handsome Paul. Paul, yes.
How are you?
Usually not unshaven. Usually just cleaned up and Cadillacing it.
Paul, you're on mute, my brother.
So it's a good time to bring him in because with the next topic we were going to discuss here is people of color still targeted for marijuana and traffic stops despite legalization, study finds. This is not an uncommon statistic to read about because we knew from the arrests involving marijuana, despite the fact that the use of the drug was equal or not any greater than in the white community versus the Black and Hispanic community, people of color were arrested in a much higher number proportionately. I think even in Oakland County, the statistics were that even though African Americans make up less than 5%, they were like 40% of the arrests for drug crimes. This study here suggests that while legalization in many states and police are less likely to conduct searches and traffic stops, but the bar for searching Black and Hispanic drivers is still lower than it is for white drivers. This study published in the Nature Human Behavior earlier this month, conducted by researchers with Stanford University and New York Universities and data from Colorado and Washington, which were two of the first states to legalize cannabis. And according to the report, after legalization of marijuana, the number of searches fell substantially in those states compared to rates in 12 control states or states where cannabis is not legalized. The researchers also found that the proportion of stops that result in either a drug-related infraction or misdemeanor fell substantially in both states after marijuana was legalized. However, the data also showed that nationwide, Black and Hispanic people are subject to vehicle searches about twice as much as white people, what the research called a gap in search thresholds. This would be an example of the discretion sometimes that is afforded to officers instead of a rule of law. There's been racial profiling as a theme and a basis to pull people over and search cars all the time. This is not, I think the bigger argument here, Paul, I want to get your thoughts on this, but another argument is that did legalization really do what it was supposed to do? There still remains, we don't talk about this enough, a lot of social injustice or social justice issues that remain, this being some of them. And arguably, even though the recreational law clearly intended to allow those that had been effectuated victims of the war on drugs, victims of the war on marijuana, through the social equity program to have an advantage. Much of that isn't really available until the after 2021, or there's been very slow roll about implementing that. But I think there's a lot, if there was another way to look at why is there still a gray market or quote unquote gray market, one of the reasons because there's a lot of people who don't have access to it on the business side, and many of those regulations, rules, over regulations didn't contemplate the people that were most effectuated by the prohibition of marijuana. What you say, Paul Talinda? Am I crazy or what?
No, the study's right on. I think it just confirms what a lot of us knew or thought anyway. Marijuana, especially in minority communities, was always the foot in the door. It was, I smell it, let me search it, let me find something else. And, we've been dealing with cases that it starts off with, it smells like this, and I find this plus that. I still think that goes on a lot in the communities where you're less likely to lawyer up and the cops have more time to deal with you. And they may find the secondary excuse, oh, well, it smells like marijuana, so let me see if you are under your limits. I think that was the classic one. Or I just think maybe perhaps with the language barrier or even the implicit fear, the step out of your car request works a lot more, is probably a lot more common, especially under the guise of officer safety. So I think that even with maybe you don't get in there because of the marijuana, I think the usual encounters that you're having in minority communities by these the types of officers that you usually deal with, they're going to have those people out of the car more likely than they would a guy like you or I, and use that to search the car to find something else for other arrests that, marijuana just might be, let's just say, also present. But, you got a suspended license, or you have, again, something else in the car that you shouldn't, or somebody has a warrant, or something that may, let's just say, qualify as an arrest after this potential marijuana issue, or just, again, might be, and marijuana was present. But no, I think that, and even in terms of the social equity side of it, the gray market exists because, like, for it, the reason it always has is because of access. And just because, the law has changed doesn't mean, again, that access has increased in a place that people would like to see it. It just means that it's less of a problem if you have it, and how you get it isn't somebody else's concern but your own. So market exists. Once those gaps start to close, you'll see, I don't know. And I think it's a matter of time, like everything else. I think you'll start to see officers who gives a shit about pot as long as you're following some of the stricter rules, much like booze.
After the MMA was passed, I could tell you in the 10 or 12 years that it was, for legalization, the number of positive police encounters that I heard about, that Section 4 immunity actually applied were maybe 3 or 4, so it's the other side of it. But I will say that since 2018, at the end of the year when the law passed, there have been a significant, I've got a couple interactions with people, whatever, that, with no charges being filed, but there's been raids, but not nearly the level that they were before, and in pale in comparison even. And a lot of those scenarios that started at a traffic stop and then carried over to the house, oh, you're a caregiver, we got to go check those your plants, or, that would happen quite a bit. We're involved with a case that's still going on, and we don't understand what the state's interest is, but we shall laugh and joke all the times we're in court about that. But nevertheless, it has subsided. I think most of the lawyers that are in our circle don't get the calls. I mean, they're more in the driving, impaired driving by cannabis is a new hot topic, but certainly fewer arrests. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the teeth are gone. I mean, I've had some, strangely enough, I've had a couple of search warrants at places that were grows that had nothing to do with the grow, and they've been there and see it and leave type of situations, which, again, it goes back to training. right? And you and I saw that progress over the years, where you'd hear the cops be the ones that say, hey, look, just legalize it, I don't care, it doesn't affect me, just make it easier on me, so I'm not forced into dealing with the finer points of what's legal and what's not. But again, that's progress. That's the evolution of the species, right? We're more tolerant now than we were before. I think to some people's, to some people will say whether we like it or not, you have to accept it. There's still a lot of cops and a lot of prosecutors that kind of wish they had that something, kind of wish they had that smell for probable cause, kind of wish they had that whole, ability to see what else you had, to look under your skirt, also had used that hugely to implement the old forfeiture laws and the like. But that was always that was always kind of the point. They had a limited set of tools and they wanted to use it, and they applied all the tools they used to every situation. The single tool they had, it was the same situation where they only had a hammer and everything looked like a nail, so it must be a crime. Which I actually, as a side note, I think that the situation we're in now with this the stay-at-home orders and the challenge, now that the police are saying, oh, well, we're not going to enforce the law because it's unclear, are the same type of police stations and police departments that 10 years ago at the MMA would say, oh, well, it's up to the prosecutor, it's not up to us, we have to enforce the law, let them sort it out. So I love the double speak, because I think that in the same tone of trying to say, oh, well, who did the guy Shiawasse say, we are responsive to our constituents and to our voters. It's like, you weren't saying that when I was up there and you were jailing patients and caregivers. You weren't up there saying that when you were raiding grows on the outside and tearing down greenhouses. So it's just convenient that now you can decide that you want to follow what the voters want when you want to follow it, and not back when it was actually a law and not just an executive order.
And while you referred to it as if it was the law of the land, I don't think there's any way it couldn't be at some point. There is no definitive ruling yet that the smell of marijuana is not probable cause. There's been some, nothing really that we can all say that I mean, I can make the argument, right?
But does there need to be? I mean, how many cases have you guys gotten in the last year where someone's car has been searched as a result of a police officer smelling marijuana?
Well, there's a couple issues that why it becomes so important now, because there's an argument that it should apply retroactively. So you have a case that existed prior to the passage of the law that you should apply the existing law in that context to the probable cause analysis. That's one argument. If it's legal, it's not contraband. On the other one, the whole Schedule 1 nonsense, is still on the table. I mean, if you were to say it's legal, but it's still Schedule 1, I mean, that gives somebody a choice to say, well, it's Schedule 1, and therefore it's contraband per se, and therefore the very presence of us lets us get in there and kicking, but not kicking the door. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it is. The smell alone has been the impetus for this. The better argument is that, and often overlooked in all of this, because this has been around at least as long as, around the same time as recreational, but that the smell that they're describing is the smell of a hemp plant, and that the nose cannot delineate the percentages of THC. THC is odorless. And no matter how skunky they may think, no matter how they always trained in police school of freshly dried, freshly cut, recently smoked, whatever. Which one?
I personally love that, Michael. I personally love that. That's an excellent way to look at it. It doesn't matter. You're smelling hemp, okay?
But I'm saying, like, all this nonsense. Again, now in today's context, it's a reality. If you take everything that they've learned, every testimony they've ever said of how they get in there because of the smell of it, it does not mean that they can say or would even know that it was, actual marijuana. Because the definition now is that cannabis sativa plant, by default, is hemp, and only those parts that are greater than 0.3% of THC are marijuana, which is legal.
Yeah, but You're not making that argument on the roadside, right? I mean,
No.
you're probably going to jail.
I totally could. I totally could be smoking some hemp on the side of the road.
You could be.
I mean,
You could be.
I could. I have a massive amount of hemp products that I indulge in. So it's very possible I could be floating down the road with a J of hemp.
Let's not kid ourselves. Amanda provides, sells, retails hemp flower for people to come and buy and roll up and smoke, and it's all lawful. These products are in gas stations. There's different places you can go and get this. The hemp plant is legal.
Yeah,
a little test. It's a perfect moment. It's a perfect moment for something that's very important that I promised to let I remember right here. But we've been without the I'm gonna lose an OC.
The hemp corner?
The hemp corner, right. And I want to provide a quick update on the hemp corner because it's a good timing for that. But I'm not gonna hold on. Here we go. The hemp corner is this. What happened to Rick? He's being sucked in, assumed by hemp.
Rick, you've got hair like plant hairs coming out the top. He doesn't need a haircut. He just needs a pair of trimming shears.
I think I finally smoked enough. Now I'm sprouting cannabis from my body.
You pickled yourself.
This is 9:51. You're listening to Planet Green Trails, episode number 464. This is the Hemp Corner. Subject: the current Michigan MDARD 2020 hemp registrants. 486 growers, 425 processor handlers, 736 growing locations, which equals 12,000 acres of hemp to be grown this year, and 335 indoor locations, which equal 10 million square feet of hemp to be grown in the year 2020. Go get them, hemp farmers and hemp processors. We need more hemp. This has been brought to you by the Hemp Corner, specifically Joel Malinsky, friend, colleague, and French poet.
Yeah, I miss his beret. I miss the beret. We have to have at least a screenshot of him, like maybe a picture flash or something, just so we can remember when he was at the office, when the good old days were here and we were able to sit around and just have a face-to-face Planet Green Trees.
It's interesting. That's been going on. That industry is still extremely unregulated. We haven't gotten the rules and regulations fully dispensed from the federal government, and we're kind of going on, very limited oversight, which is good for right now, but we'll see where it goes. Should we go on another topic? We had so many other good topics to discuss here. Jamie, I know you were interested in.
I'm just curious. I'm curious. Are you guys, Paul and Michael, familiar with that circuit court judge in Shiawasse that currently ruled in favor of the Barber situation?
Yeah, Judge Stewart. Paul, we had the Barber's lawyer on. Very nice guy. He indulged us with the whole process. He made it
Go
ahead.
Is that judge known to be friendly toward cannabis issues?
Not at all. No, he's jailed.
Just that's what I thought. I'm just checking it.
He's jailed.
Very selective with his liberties. Yeah.
Indeed, of course, right? Of course, he jailed. He's one of those guys, and I believe his statement was something like everybody gets jail. And he's also one of those judges when you go in there and the prosecutor gives you the heads up that like, hey, this guy's a jailer, like not good. But yeah, he's a selective justice kind of guy. But yeah, he's fairly new. I think he's been in there since 14.
Judge Lestraka was, this is here. Let me tell a little history. Judge Lestraka was the former circuit court judge. So I think he was a prosecutor, the county prosecutor, then became the judge for a lot of years until he retired. He was the circuit court judge that wrote the opinion in the trivia game. Very important medical marijuana case in Michigan. Paul, anybody, just throw a name out there. Larry King. The King Kallman case, the King case, the dog run came out of Shiawasse. Lestraka at the circuit court found that it was an enclosed lock facility. Went up to the next court. The former circuit court judge from Shiawasse that was on the Court of Appeals agreed with Lestraka, but the other two judges did not. And then it went to the Supreme Court. Just a little MMA history there. I like Lestraka. He had some. He did some weird things. But I did not appear in front of that judge, and he was a former defense lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, Paul.
I believe he was, and I think he had. Yeah, I think he was one of the locals there. I don't know if he was well liked, but the odd part about that was, like you're saying with Straka, and even at the district court level, I've had, you know what, and actually before I had this guy send, some caregivers growing in greenhouses to jail, the district court judge, we were able to keep a lot of like PWID cases, a lot of things that should be felonies, keep them down in the district court level at 7411 and essentially just fine the guy and send him home.
Right.
So to go from that, and then you get jammed up where you go to circuit, and the guy, the judge is like, oh, everybody gets 30 days. And you got some guy growing in the greenhouse and, some technical violation that no longer is against the law. And the guy does right because this judge has some kind of principle to adhere to.
I have a question. Sure. I'm wondering, what do you guys think from a legal standpoint? Like, now that we've got all of the regulation set and of course the licensing process and everybody's gone through and is issued and there's all these types of things, how likely or what do you anticipate, I guess, what the future will look like with law enforcement going into these places with compliance issues? Do you think that's a possibility where we're going to run into at some point, now that we've got it all established? Now we have to check and make sure everybody's following those rules, right? So do you think at any point there might be law enforcement activity with licensed folks in addition to unlicensed folks?
I think we're going to see with the unlicensed side, you're going to see what we've seen, which is the state police showing up and shutting them down and writing them tickets and going the civil route, going more of like, let's just say the nuisance route. I think and we're starting to see it now. And even we're actually luckier, I think, some of the other states, but like if you go out west, like California, cops will just, hey, we're here to do our inspection and walk in and so on and so forth. Whereas the further east you move, we have LARA. So we would have like a plainclothes person. So we're not dealing with, uniformed officers coming into the building. And I don't think that will change. I think that, for the administrative process that it is, there'll be administrative violations. You would have to do something, man, really good to get your door kicked in. And you'd have to do, and it wouldn't just be a regular marijuana operation. And it wouldn't be one of those like, oops, you did something wrong.
And you should know it's coming at that point. You've probably had notice.
Oh, right. And like I said, it's a front. It would be a front, or it's just like you're selling marijuana and like 8 balls of cocaine or crack or whatever, or you're doing something else, or you're running books in the back. I mean, it would really take something. It would take something else. Like I said, I've had warehouses raided this calendar year where the cops just like, okay, it's pot. All right, we're not here for that. We're out of here. Like their search warrants don't even count anything. It's not even just a catch-all of all drugs, because they know that someone's going to come back and complain and they're going to have to go pay for it. So, and again, that's actually another side of it, is because with the administrative side, they can write you a ticket and squeeze you for a couple bucks. It's better for the program. And that is more of a business penalty for the smart business people, because now you're getting your name dragged through the mud. You're paying a bunch of unnecessary money. Why not just keep your nose clean and stay under the radar? That's more effective and that's more mature. That's how they treat.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense.
My experience is somewhat like that, I would say, with a little caveat. And I think that the state is even struggling a little bit in terms of how they want to do this. And what I mean by that is that you obviously have a mantra that's been accepted. If it's going to be legal, we're going to tax and regulate it, and this is how it is. And the line has been drawn in the sand. And there's good actors that are going to be over here, and if you're a bad actor, you're over here. And that has been sold hook, line, and sinker. And this is the way that we're living, and this is the environment. And maybe things will change, and there'll be an evolution. We'll have more of a common sense approach. But that's what we're dealing with right now. So with that being said, you've got areas that need, from that perspective of the state, you've got areas that need to be protected because they're in the best interest of the state, they're tax producers. And then you have those that are competing against that, they're the bad actors that need to be interacted with. And the question to me that I see is their struggle is like, how are they going to deal with it? It's difficult to prosecute hardcore, put people in jail, felony charges if it's marijuana now because it's legal. So you have to find some other methodology, which is the business operation crimes illegally occurring, even CCEs, like conducting an enterprise, a business unlawfully, or conducting a illegal business or lawful business in an illegal manner, something to that effect. These are different types of charges. And I do think that they're going to be enforcement on this. I think there's a couple cases that make the case here of how they're looking at it. I mean, Genesee County of all places, which we've all within the community seen as being a green bubble kind of. Everyone likes David Layton, thinks he's been kind of better than most. And but there was like 3 or 4 raids of places that were doing recreational events or memberships that were not licensed through the state, and they weren't knocking the doors, they weren't posting a sticker to the door. They were raids that they took money and went in with the guns and kicked in the door, and no charges have been brought yet. But the inclination that they're going to bring charges. You don't usually do that, cause that much damage, take that much material unless there's going to be charges. But it also goes to the state's position on what is not taking place of things that were believed were going to take place, but in fact, what is taking place with the cases that lingered in the past. They have not been dismissed. They've not resolved them in a way that we thought because of the legalization. And they go on. And of the ones that I'm involved with, not only is it an atrocity that they're taking place, and they don't know what to do, and they're literally just hanging on for ego, pride, or some other reason. They also are operating on the old forfeiture laws that have been deemed unconstitutional. And every day that goes by, the property that's subject to forfeiture, with liens on it, slandering of the property, title, anyone that understands what's taking place in forfeiture would understand these are constitutional Eighth Amendment violations that are taking place every day that they have not released the encumbrance of the property in excess. Just like they're violating it today. It continues to go on without any redress. Rather distressing, and maybe something that the Democratic Cannabis Caucus should look into. But I digress a little. I just think that the way of the future, Amanda, I think the question is about licensing versus unlicensing, and what it's done is I think it's, and I would say the licensed folks are not being generally criminalized. They're immune, actually. There's a great amount. You're allowed, as long as you have a license, there's like unlimited amounts of cannabis you can possess, things you can do with it, transfer it, blah blah, all over the place, and it really sets you. I mean, there's some. It's not like they were arguing before the United States Supreme Court that a sitting president can't commit a crime. It's not like that. It's not that kind of immunity they're talking about. But there's certainly specific things that are identified, protected, even if outside of. And I don't think I know of any licensed facility that was charged with, violations that resulted in criminal charges. We haven't seen that yet. We know of like Iron Labs, for example. They had all kinds of real negative. I don't know what the backdrop was, but they settled for like big chunk of cash. I think.
Well, that's why there's no criminal charges.
Right. If you like, the allegations were bad. Like I'm not justifying. I don't know anything about it.
But they get sanctioned through Laura. They pay an enormous fucking fine, and you get to continue. And that's just how business works.
They got sued this week because of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
what's that?
Somebody sued them I think somebody from Lapeer sued the guy, sued Iron Labs for like improper testing on his vape carts. And it was like a 65-page complaint. And it was, it was posted on some group on Facebook about it. And the guy was pissed.
Yeah.
For a 65-page complaint, he must have been.
I was
Wait, it's
pissed.
like improper complaints, Paul. That's what it sounds.
No,
like.
he had there was a lawyer that filed it, and the way I have to go back and read it, but it sounded like the way the guy made it was, they didn't make it right, they wouldn't make it right, they wouldn't do it, fuck these guys kind of attitude, where it sounded like the guy didn't want to sue necessarily, but wasn't getting the relief he wanted. And I have to take a look and see what it's based on. If it's like an error testing where and I'm starting to hear more about this, was that you get this test and all of a sudden, it's the lab's fault that this one thing is wrong. And then they go take it tested somewhere else. And that lab says, no, our numbers are fine.
Well, part of the problem is there's not really a baseline. You guys all know this, I'm sure, but there's not really a baseline for testing cannabis. But I have also heard of several different caregivers taking the same, for instance, take 3 grams out of the same pound and label it something completely different and get 3 different test results. And I'm not saying any one particular lab, so I want to throw that out there. I'm not blaming, but I have heard of that case happening more than I would feel comfortable with, like it shouldn't happen like that, but it does. There's no baseline. There's no baseline for testing. That's just how it is.
There's no baseline I haven't had any cannabis test in quite some time now. But when I did, I know that the certainty of the test was not great. They would right around plus or minus 10%.
Yes, that's significant.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it's improved over time. But with plus or minus 10%, that's a pretty big swing.
Yeah, you can't. That's
almost
not an acceptable
scientifically
variance.
not usable at a plus or minus 10%.
Yeah,
that's so outside the normal variance.
Yeah, and I'm not speaking to. I just want to be clear. I'm not speaking to Iron Labs or that case. I have no idea. So
yeah, we're not talking about any lab. We're just talking about experience
in general. Yes.
I want to give everyone a chance to talk, and I feel like Jamie, you haven't really got a chance, Rick. But you know what? It's time for Steve Miller's piece, and he's got to go at it. Look at him. Look how patient he is over there. And it's time for that special moment in the show where we all look forward to where I don't have to talk.
I can't wait.
He's going to handle the entertainment from this point forward. This, of course, is the Planet Green Tree Entertainment Corner.
The Cannabis Entertainment Corner. CEC, not to be confused with CCE, the criminal charge.
And tonight's topic, if I'm not mistaken,
we certainly don't want CCEs.
Actors who get a lot of credit for are in a lot of movies, but they really suck as actors. That's what we're going to talk about, right, Steve? Go ahead.
No, we've already done that several times. What I'm going to talk about is different movies. So this one was out at the theaters this past year. It's called Ready Player One. It's a Steven Spielberg film. And I came upon a rewatch of this movie with my kids the other night. My daughter made mention something about, probably in the future, everybody's going to be living in a virtual world. And you just come back here just to eat, sleep, and go back in the virtual world. And I said, well, have I got the movie for you? Ready Player One doesn't really have any famous actors in it, but they were all good actors in my opinion. And what it is it's well into the future, and people live to go into this, what they call the Oasis. And it's the virtual world, and you put on a virtual headgear and a suit, and you go in and play games, live your life. And the movie centers upon the creator of this Oasis virtual universe, makes a mention that he, before he died, he put an Easter egg within the oasis, and go find it. And so the story focuses on this kid who grows up in the poor end of town. They call it the stacks, which is literally just trailers stacked upon each other. And Columbus, Ohio is the place to be when at the time in the future when this is focused. So great movie. It's good for the kids, whole family, adults, everybody. It's just a good overall movie. It's got really good graphics and everything. Highly recommend this one. It was good at the theater and it was good at home as well. The other film is the Incredible Hulk from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So my kids and I are this is the second movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This one stars Ed Norton, who's also a very good actor, been in a lot of things. Liv Tyler, she's pretty good. Tim Roth and William Hurt, he's been in a lot of stuff too. Unfortunately, the discussion I had with my kids was that this one is probably the worst movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, I do like the Hulk, and I did like the movie. They actually did another Hulk movie that just called Hulk before this one. It was kind of a prequel to this one, but is not affiliated with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it was all the events that probably transpired prior to this Incredible Hulk movie. And just to note, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is the only time that Edward Norton plays the Incredible Hulk in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mark Ruffalo does it in the other movies, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, that's exactly it. Mark Ruffalo. And he does a fantastic job. Although Edward Norton is a good actor, I think Mark Ruffalo nails the role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So The Incredible Hulk, it's a good watch. It's a good movie, good effects, but probably the worst one for the Marvel movies.
Well, the one guy you mentioned in there carries his character over into other Marvel movies too. That's William Hurt. William Hurt's character later appears in the Avengers as he supervises the prison where Hulk, where those guys are kept at the end of Avengers 2. So
yeah, Stryker, General Stryker, I believe he is now.
Yeah,
General Stryker.
So,
so
Steve,
from that movie he carries over.
Yeah. In the X-Men movies.
Are you giving it a buds up or what? What kind of buds does that one get?
You know,
half a bud.
It's an okay.
Like half a joint.
Yeah. You know, I
like some.
What else is good about the movie is Lou Ferrigno has a cameo in it. Who played the Hulk in the original Hulk, Incredible Hulk TV series starring Bill Bixby as Bruce Banner, David Banner, and
Taking it back.
Yep, and Lou Ferrigno played the Hulk, and that was one of my dad and I's favorite shows. We used to watch that every week. We used to look forward to it. I think it was on, I want to say it was like a Friday night at 10, Channel 7 or something. And what a great show. That might be worth a rewatch, depending on how much left we got of this quarantine. But,
hey,
but
you know what?
He had a cameo. It was great. He had a great role in it.
You know how we did a Nicky Cage movie a couple of weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I think we all agreed that he is in a lot of movies, but he's not he's not the absolute best actor in the great wide world. There are quite a few movies that are good. I came across a movie called what the heck was it called? Color Out of Space. Okay, I rented it. It's not Nicky Cage.
What's
and Color Out of Space. It's a brand new one. Elijah Wood is in. Well, actually, he's a producer. Let's see who stars. Nick Cage, and guess who? Tommy Chong.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's 2019. It's actually, you'll have to rent it, but it is worth a rental. It's a science fiction. It's got a lot of great scenes, and he's actually pretty good in this one.
All right. Yeah, he's not too horrible.
No, he's not too horrible. He's very intense. Every movie, he's just the intensity level is like at 500.
He might overdo it a little bit sometimes.
I want to ask you a question. You reminded me of when you're talking about the movie, the first one, the Ready Player One. It reminded me of a film that at some point I was looking for. I thought Ralph Fiennes was in it. Ralph Fiennes, the actor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the future, but they are able to like people will record their experience and then sell their the tape of what they went through. So people were doing all this crazy stuff, videotaping getting killed or and then they were. And I'm looking. Does anyone recall for anybody? Anyone ring a bell at all? I feel like Ralph Fiennes was in it. Nope. Okay. All right. What other? I mean. And do you recall any other virtual reality movies?
Well, there was a series that I watched a few episodes of called The Black Mirror. I want to say it's on Netflix, but I can't be quoted. And actually, it's pretty good, and it's not one of those that one plays off of the other because each is independent, as an independent story. So it's not like you have to watch, part one in order to get part four. But there was a virtual reality section in that, and it was really interesting. And I don't know the name of the episode, but the series is called Black Mirror, The Black Mirror.
So a current show, which I was planning actually on talking about this, it's on Prime Video, just came out. It's called Upload. And what it focuses on is, before you die, you get into a contract with whatever virtual reality company. And if you somehow time it right before you die, they upload all your thoughts into the system. And now you're living in a virtual world.
I need to watch that one. My son has watched it, and he told me just on Saturday that it was a really, really good one.
It's pretty good.
So, yeah, I'm going to watch it.
Episodes, they kind of ended it. What a terrible way to end the last episode. It's like, now I have to wait for a year to find out what's going to happen. That's a terrible way to do things, Jim.
Yeah, they do that with Better Call Saul as well, and it drives me crazy.
Cliffhangers. It's a very useful tool for those people who use them.
And you know what?
Speaking of cliffhanger, wasn't Sly Stallone in Cliffhanger? Was that the correct actor? All right.
Sly Stallone was in Cliffhanger. So, anyways, Upload. It's kind of a weird way to look at things. It's just it's a good watch. It focuses on virtual reality, being dead, and now you're living in a virtual reality, and people that are the living can come visit you in the virtual world, and it's pretty wild. Upload on Prime Video. So then I think for next week, I'm gonna open up this gem.
Oh boy.
Which is Men in Black International.
Yeah. You'll enjoy that, Steve. We watched that with the kids.
Starring Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, who are probably my two favorite actors right now. And
yeah, I don't mind watching Chris Hemsworth.
I'm not watching Tessa Thompson either. And, but they were in Thor Ragnarok together. And she was the Valkyrie and he's Thor. And they had a good comedic back and forth between the two of them throughout that movie. So I missed this one at the theater and I've been dying to see it. So I grabbed it the other day and So I'm going to watch that this week and review that for next week. But you guys already know it's good, so I'll probably have some other stuff to review too. But
Can I tell you?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I interrupt. I was watching. I watched the series called The Feed, which was virtual reality too, and they implant you with something, and they can get into all of your memories. Yeah, it's creepy.
All right, Michael, you got an album to defend tonight, sir.
We doing it? You really want to do
it? You're doing it. You are doing it. You've been wanting to do it, and now is the time. You cannot procrastinate any longer.
I mean, I've lost momentum. But do you guys, I feel like let Jimmy and Rick talk a little bit. Let them get their chew in. Come on.
All right.
Unless they don't want to, can we?
It's
maybe
10 after. It's 20 minutes after 10. Do your album thing and let's be done. Let's go for it. Finish it out.
All right. So I like Bob Dylan. I've liked him for a long time.
Yes, you do.
The album's got a big catalog of music. He's still going at it. Just released a new album coming out, and
most importantly, you like the Jesus Bob Dylan.
Well, I like a lot of things about music, and I'm talking just as for him as an artist. And I think it's interesting to see. You know, he has a certain resilience about him that you have to respect. He's been the forefront of a lot of different types of sounds that evolved, and he's transitioned out of it when he was at his highest peak and gone a completely different direction. There's different albums along the way where he was getting booed and called Judas, because he started playing rock and roll, like left his folk singers. So he's always had he's been prolific and oftentimes, maybe not. I mean, he's had both commercial and artistic success, but and of course, when you listen to music, these are always subjective factors. And when you listen to music or learn about a certain artist, a lot of it depends on where you are and what you're going through at the time. And my whole introduction, I think I got the greatest hits 1 and 2 when I was in, sophomore and junior college, just totally got into it. And, ate it all up, all the songs. And it was this catalog for a certain period of time. And he was kind of just on the road. And so I've always loved Blood on the Tracks. I think it's the best album, generally speaking, of his recorded stuff. He's going through a breakup. It's very personal, I think. I think it's really much about what an asshole he is in it. But when you hear it, when the first time I heard it, it's like, him calling out how bad she was, kind of stuff. But it's really not. I think it's a lot of very reflective, and it has different meanings to everybody as you listen to it. But a phenomenal album. Blood on the Tracks came out also around the same time as Blonde on Blonde, 2 just seminal albums in rock and roll history. And after those albums, he kind of went into commercial falter, like he was kind of floating around. I mean, I like all of his albums, but just, weird kind of little pieced together during this period of time as he kind of rolled through the 70s. And we start going into the 80s. And you got to remember, the 80s is at this point in time, Ronald Reagan is coming to office. It's like the Christian right is a new thing in politics. They're like the what do you call it? The silent majority kind of thing. And I don't think that this is a thing that had anything to do with the Reagan politics, but it's just interesting at the time that this was a factor in American politics. And this Jewish kid from Minnesota had become a born-again Christian. And
that'll make your parents mad.
2 albums about this, where it's about the slow train is coming, and to listen to it now is kind of interesting because I'm sure there's places across the country that have written off the coronavirus as the sins of the people. We had this coming. The heavens are going to part and brimstone, whatever. And this is all we're going to second coming and all this stuff. So. This album is all about this. We are, it's like he's just criticizing the shit out of everybody. And, very visual images of the end of days kind of stuff. And, but the lyrics are great. They kind of call out, as he does, all the things wrong as a social critic of America's policies. And the thing that really, so there's this, so then I don't think I ever really got into the original studio recording, but as Bob Dylan has done through his record companies, produced all these kind of like 50, 40 song tracked albums that are all the bootlegs from the albums that we've come to love. So the Blood on the Tracks, for example, which is the greatest album ever, each of those songs is like 3 or 4 different recordings that didn't make the album, you know? And when Bob Dylan recorded, unlike other musicians, there's something very unique about him. When he recorded, unlike other musicians, they didn't record the song, they recorded the performance. So at all times they had the microphones on. He may hop over to the piano. I'm gonna try it on piano. Let's go. We're gonna do, whatever. And he would just start, let's do that. And he played on the band would just jump in and they just cut it. And that may make the album or not, but it's the recordings that or the performance they're recording, not necessarily the song and how it came out that particular way. So, and you know how his voice has changed over the years and how he sings now. I've read all of his books of how he came to this. It was away from he came to a realization about his life. He was just going to be on the road. This is what he did. This is his thing. This is God-given talent. He's going to just roll and rock and roll and be on the road. This is it. And that's what he's doing. He's just a phenomenon in that regard. And he developed different styles of singing. He's always got a great band. His voice, he's singing like 9 or 10 bars ahead of the place that the song to be in a kind of weird and unique way. But anyways, the point is that of these bootlegs for each of these albums that he put out, there's this one, I don't know, it's bootleg 13 something. I don't even know. I can tell you what it's called, but it's a bunch of live performances of the tour in 1980 and 81 of him supporting this Slow Train Coming. He's got a bunch of gospel singers in the background, and his voice is top notch. He hasn't gone into the whininess. He's really belting it out. I mean, it's him, but it's certainly not in some of the other, kind of framed voice that I feel like he has, that developed over time with him. And there's just some great, great songs that are, and I'll say this, he is so into the subject matter, which is what makes the performances so great. I think he really, truly is born again and believing in this way at the time. And, he's out supporting it, and he's singing it and meaning it. And I think that goes true for all artists, if they are into the subject matter that somebody believe in, kind of adds, you may not know what it is, but that's what kind of makes the performance, makes the song or whatever. So it is this live recording of the Slow Train Coming and the band that supports him and his voice and subject matter and the timing of it all. And those are my subjective views of it. So I am not taking any comments or criticism. That's it.
I've had a couple of folks. Our dear friend Daryl says "Lay Lady Lay" is his favorite song, and Colleen Keys, she's put down "Hard Rain Gonna Fall" and "Just Another Cup of Coffee."
Sure.
So you've got definitely some support from the viewers.
Everybody should know that Bob Dylan introduced the Beatles to marijuana. I mean, if there's any significance of all this in our cannabis community, anyways, anyone else?
Documentation for that, sir.
Anyone else a Bob Dylan fan in here? Jamie, you ever listen to anyone? Rick? Paul? Is it Paul? All right.
Paul gives a thumbs up.
Thumbs up from Paul.
By the way,
the hurricane, baby. The hurricane.
The bootleg of the Blood on the Tracks is pretty solid too, just as a matter of fact. I think there's also some if the Beatles did that, they released all some of the other recordings that never made it. I mean, what I'm saying? Like, Beatles need to do a new album, don't they? Like, you've heard it all, you kind of want another one, or somebody that some of these old track, stuff from the.
I think it might be problematic for them to do another album, Michael.
That's my point. But so you have these, I'm sure there's a library of unreleased.
Probably a way to do it.
I did see a couple of folks that they did those holograms on stage, and had them just appear as if they were.
Yeah, like Biggie and Tupac.
Heck yeah.
Ronnie,
so there we have it.
Deal, I think, had some sort of a tour.
Has anybody ever heard of the Black Album, which is like somebody samples the Beatles, some Beatles songs and does a bunch of rapping on it? It's, I think, Jay-Z. I mean, they never. It's a kind of. I don't think they ever released it. They just, it was like kind of bootlegged or whatever. Paul, you ever heard of that stuff?
I believe it's the Gray album. It's the Jay-Z's Black album, the Beatles' White album, and it's the rapping over the Beatles music.
Right.
I think it's on YouTube.
Right.
I'm there. I'm gonna check it out.
Weeds and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty solid.
There's a lot of them. The guy who does that has a couple other ones that are also very clever. So I think if you find that on YouTube, there'll be other videos that he does, and they're all pretty good.
What kind of music review are we doing next week, Michael?
Well, who wants to defend an album?
Yeah, who wants to pick out what they're going to defend? Rick, you want to defend something? Jamie? Because Jim already did. Michael did. Steve does his movie review.
What do you want to do? Dookie.
Yeah.
Go on. Keep going.
Jamie, come on. What do you say? You want to do like...
They don't seem into it.
Or something like that?
Oh, I'll bring the favorite Cars album next week and defend it.
What's that? Listen, we're going to end up doing Kiss Alive 1 at the Kobo again. Come on. Come up with... I'm kidding.
I can review that one every week.
Black Diamond Live off that album is really solid.
Yes, that's my favorite version of Black Diamond.
Yes. I mean, what about...
Might be my favorite live recorded song. Could
That's
be.
The pre-recording the violins that they do. Come on, it's awesome. Just kidding.
Well, there was a lot of in-studio work on those Kiss records, the live ones, but they sounded great, I thought. Which in the end, that's all that matters, right? I don't care how they did it, as long as it sounds good. How about that for philosophy?
I like that.
I like that.
I feel like I should have read some lyrics from the album. But I'm not doing that now. Don't worry. We're over past that. I'm just saying, like, just
we'll just announce the next one. Maybe on Monday or Tuesday. We'll let everybody know what we're going to talk about for our next album review.
Hey, let me ask you guys something. Explain a little bit, if you can. I know you guys had Ryan Bessor on your show, and we hope to get him on, and we wish him well. I know
next week he wants to come on. His product line is going to launch the next day.
All right, that's awesome.
So, will you explain to the listeners what you learned from him in terms of his license status, if he has one, or if he's is he licensing his intellectual property brand, or is he producing actual cannabis somewhere with a license? Or please explain. I'm just curious. Some people are asking some. I mean, if you can.
Yeah, well, he's working in conjunction with cultivators. They're branding products in conjunction with him.
His name and his image and his company are selling points, so he can have that put on packaging without ever touching the cannabis, and still remain completely compliant. People that produce the cannabis, people that retail the cannabis, recognize that improves the value.
Right, because the article suggests that his meaning his product, but he is not per se hands-on touching it. And that was, although I thought that there might be anything to do that since I'm assuming did Lansing opt in? I thought that they might have, however, but they could have gotten a recreational license. I just thought that he would have been precluded under the MMFLA. For what we know, it doesn't. The MMFLA doesn't reward, obviously, does the opposite. But it's an intellectual property arrangement that he is.
It's a unique position that exists between processor and retailer, which was not necessarily originally envisioned with the law itself. However, it's a very valid niche, and it certainly seems positive in other things too. We see people like the Redken people that have all these lines of shampoos and never ever touch them. They come directly from the manufacturer right to the retailer, and they just slap a Redken label on them. So very similar to this with Basor's name carrying as much cachet as it does, since he's been, disadvantaged as much.
And Ryan identified some really good cultivators and some good strains to represent his products, and so that was a lot of it too. He's very hip to who's producing the quality products and who to work with out there. He's put a lot into this.
His brand is being purchased, and the method by which it's being put onto the market is under his guidance, consulting, and under his protocols, so that it represents his brand's intention. You're saying that he's contracting with cultivators and processors?
I'm not making any statements about his contractual obligations to any of those people. I think it would be inappropriate because I'm not familiar at all with them. All I'm saying is that those people grow cannabis and they ship it to places, and when they package it, they put his label on it. That's all.
You can see Rick was involved with a series of promotional videos where the people he works with are in them, and they discuss their involvement with Ryan and stuff like that.
Yep, awesome. Fantastic facilities. Some of these places are like NASA operations, if you ask me. I look at some of these setups and the controls that they've got and all of the safeguards, and it really looks extremely high tech. Now, granted, my expertise is not top of the line in that particular industry, but from a layman's terms, wow, some of that stuff is amazing.
Excellent. Well, we hope to have
Do you know if most of his cultivators are from Michigan?
Oh, all of them. In fact, all of them are licensed MMF, LA, and I think all of them are MRTMA also too.
Yeah, a lot of people
stuff.
A lot of people remember Drew Driver. He's been involved with this stuff for many, many years. He goes back to the original MAC organization and having a place up in Gaylord many years ago. He's got Driven Grow. He's involved with Tom Miller, who we also had on Relief Solutions, who was also a sponsor of Digital Hash Bash.
That's what I like. I like to hear that Michigan folks are still having a part in the game.
Well, and not only is it the redemption story about Ryan and about how successful he's going to be with this product line, but also a micro story within a story is about Kalkaska. Here's a community that's absolutely accepted cannabis businesses of various types into their industrial zone. They've got quite a few of them that have property there, and a lot of what's going to be produced that'll be labeled redemption is going to come from that area. That community benefits from this industry, whereas surrounding communities who've turned a cold shoulder do not. So it's interesting at the inception of this entire program to see the odd collection of communities that said yes, and the very obvious communities that have been saying no. It's kind of surprising.
There's a case early on. His name is not Archie Griffin. It's Archie something else.
Keel.
Was that in Kalkaska? It was, wasn't it?
Yes.
They've come a long way, baby.
They have. Well, and again, the profit motive certainly will turn people's heads around. Jamie will tell you, a lot of smaller municipalities in the Lake Huron shoreline were enticed to have proper.
The Penn County kind of set things off.
Yeah.
It's all that stuff.
Yep. So what we've seen is, single examples really making a difference regionally, and Kalkaska is going to be that example too. And then, of course, the shit part of this whole thing is that Gaylord, if they had just been cool for a year or two and let everybody be the way they were up in Gaylord, they could have continued to have a successful launch. They could have had businesses transitioning from the gray market into the regular market, and just like Ann Arbor, they would already have a big leg up. It would be a huge advantage for them if they had that existing industry that they destroyed. If that was intact right now, that community would be so much ahead of all the other surrounding municipalities.
And of course, for the Daily Double, does anyone know who Archie Griffin is, who is not Archie Keel? Anybody? Archie Griffin going once?
Football.
Yeah, for sure. Famous quarterback.
Running back, 2 Heisman trophies, I'm going to say. We have 1 or 2.
Ohio State. The Ohio State, right?
That's right. Bo Schembechler and Anthony Carter days, I think, back then. But I'm aging myself. Rick Leach may have played also then.
All right, so I got a little Michigan trivia for you guys.
Okay.
Let's see who's smart about Michigan.
Trivia.
There's a city in the background, in my background. That's Sunrise on Lake Huron side. Does anybody know what city that is?
That looks like Petoskey.
No, sir.
Is it,
To Jamie.
is it Taos?
No, sir.
Is it Alpena?
Alpena, Jamie got it. Second try.
Oh, I said Alpena first.
Yeah, Paul over there was. Don't give Jamie credit. He's just like a,
I didn't hear Paul, but when he said Jamie specifically, I thought he went to Taos just to.
Did Paul say Alpena?
Knowing that we have a store there.
Sunrise side.
All right.
Paul wins some honey, right? He gets some honey.
Yes, absolutely. Next time I see Paul, I will have a
By the way,
bottle.
Squeeze out a little honey for him.
It's excellent.
I want to make a program announcement in our ongoing efforts to try to bring entertainment and topics and discourse to the community. We have been able to book for next Thursday's Planet Green Trees the Democratic candidate who'll be running against Jessica Cooper, the Oakland County seat, and whoever wins the primary will likely win the election. So there's a lot going into this. We're going to talk about, amongst other things, campaigning in the lockdown states and what her views are of enforcement of cannabis laws moving forward into the new era, and any other things that we can drag out of her about that she can say negatively about Jessica Cooper will probably be our goal. But we're looking forward to it, and we want to take questions in advance for anyone that's still listening. And if you want to forward those to us, we will put those together. And because we really want to make an attempt to vet this candidate who's running against an incumbent. I know our community in particular, the cannabis community, medical cannabis community, have wounds and scars and memories, nightmares from interactions out there. I mean, wow, it's pretty. And if you think about it, Jessica Cooper got elected in 2008, I think it was, and relied extensively on the criminal defense bar and did not was I wouldn't say made promises. I don't think she made promises that she didn't keep. She just turned into just a terrible policy all the way around. And I think not a great environment for many of the people that work there. But I don't want to. It is what it is. I don't want to talk negatively about that. We'll let the candidates do that. But
well, that sounds like a good show, a good topic.
Yeah, it'll be a good one.
Guest.
Karen McDonald is the candidate's name. She's former judge in Oakland County, and left the bench and is going to run for prosecutor in Oakland County. And wants to change things from drill into criminal justice reform. So we'll get our questions and vet it and see, for those who live in Oakland County, whether she's the candidate worth supporting. But that's what we got going next week, amongst other things.
All right. And then, Michael, I also want you to take notice. I wore my Lions shirt this week in honor of Eric Hipple being on last week.
Very nice. Very nice. Komorn Law, best dressed.
Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate that. And
thanks.
Entire broadcast, nobody knew you were wearing it, for God's sake. At least just a camera. Just kidding. That was fun last week with Eric, wasn't it? That was kind of
to have him on.
That was a great show.
What an interesting gentleman to consider all that he's done after his football career.
Yeah.
Most athletes, there's not a whole lot once they stop playing, but he had a whole second life. What a guy.
Yeah, it was great. He contributes so much. He's got so much value to share.
What a good guy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, last week I said, there's very few athletes that have been, there's a lot of, relatively speaking, there's not a lot of athletes, professional athletes, but of that group, there's some that are like superstars, right? And those that have, you know, when they go out, it's not always pretty, you know, and they hold on and they can't reinvent themselves. They were kind of talking about that. What do I do? I've been, you know, playing sports and committed to sports, similar to the military, similar to policing, as Steve mentioned. And I, just because I don't know. I mean, you know, and I'm talking from the artist or as the athlete. I'm not talking about people, but like, you know, Mike Tyson was always fun to watch. Such a, you know, and I mentioned that he seemed like someone who reinvented himself. He got out of the sport. He was kind of, you know, had a new view on life. And then I just read that he's getting back in the ring. He's going back to fighting. Did anybody see that?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, he might box again. Yeah.
You know,
Plus, we got COVID virus now. Get me in the ring.
Daddy's got to pay some bills. That's what that says, maybe. You know, one more. You know,
George
ESPN battle. One.
You know, God. How old was George Foreman when he was still fighting big men?
45. He
knocked out Michael Moore, and I won the championship, I think.
I would not want to have a tussle with that guy, even if he was 95. I'm telling you, Foreman still. Tyson too.
I got to say, George Foreman is somebody that reinvented himself. Remember that? Because when he lost the Rumble in the Jungle, he was devastated. Like, it ruined him. He left boxing for a while, and then he came back and
with the grills.
With the grills, right?
Selling those grills.
Lovable. Like, he was like, he hated everything, talked to the press. He was like, you know, and then he became back like a really
lovable guy. Yeah.
That are resilient like that. That's always a good quality to have.
Yes.
Jamie, did we get enough tonight? I don't know. I feel like you didn't talk enough. What do you listen to, like, music in the background? Like, you're looking at another podcast somewhere else, aren't you?
He's cheating on us.
You know, we were going to try to get Jeff Frazier. I realized we didn't get him in here. He was going to play some music at the breaks and stuff. But
well, there's always next week.
That's right. All right. So
we'll get him next week.
Everybody had enough. I see people just walking away, crashing out here. Jim left.
Well, it was a good show. It was a good show.
To the end.
Paul, thanks for hanging in with us. Appreciate it. And good catching up. And we'll talk soon. And
thank you. We'll talk soon.
See you, man.
Bye, Paul.
Be well. Be safe.
Jamie, Rick, thank you. Guys,
good night.
Steve, Jim.
Bye, everybody.
Jamie, I left your. Hello?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, I left a couple of things of honey for you over at Deb's.
Very nice. Thank you very much, man.
Enjoy those.
I'll try to.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Bye, guys.
No problem. See you, Jamie.
All right, guys.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Welcome back. I was digging those tunes. I was jamming. Really, if I wore underwear, I would throw them on stage, but I don't wear any underwear. We'll come back to that. But anyway, I had someone really awesome to introduce you guys to. He is basically going to be the first ever virtual dancing and, the tunes coming out with the cannabis plants. Tom Wall is going to be jamming out with his plants, and this is going to be something you do not want to miss. Tom?
How's it going?
So hopefully, can you guys hear me well?
Yep.
Okay, you guys can hear me good? Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just start off giving a little bit of an explanation on the technology that I'm going to use to perform this. But this device takes two electrodes, one that hooks up to the leaf of the plant, and then one that hooks up to the root. And the one that hooks up to the root looks just like a spike like that. And it goes down in the roots. And through the two, what happens is it can register the electromagnetic fluctuations between the two. And it basically makes a wave pattern. Through that wave pattern, it assign musical notes per size of wave, allowing it to generate music. But the interesting thing about it is that when I got into this, and I've done it with all sorts of different types of plants, but that they not only can play music, but they can play music with you. And they seem to kind of respond to what you do. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I plan on obviously doing this in the diag, and I was kind of really going to be surprised to see how it would react with that many people around. But this particular variety here is called Cosmic Splooge, and the name of our band, Cosmic Knot, came out of trying to name a cannabis strain a long time ago. And it's the idea of looking for a particular flavor that's very rare. It's kind of like along the lines of Acapulco Gold and the Colombian Gold. You can't find it very often anymore. But this is the culmination of a lot of years of searching, and it's still not quite there, but we're really happy to have this. So this is the Cosmic Splooge plant that really started the whole thing in the first place. But I think we should have it all hooked up now. So let me turn up the volume and allow you guys to hear what it sounds like by itself, and then I'll chime in with it, and we'll try and do a duet, and then I'll let it back to you guys because I know we're trying to keep things rolling. So without further ado, this is the first time a cannabis plant has made music that I know of on any videos, let alone on a virtual form and live facet. So this is really cool, and the fact that this is for Hash Bash is even cooler. 50 years ago, people were going to prison for this, and now we get to have a plant play for everybody. So here we go. So I hope that translated well. The type of music has been called organoleptic music, meaning organoleptic is evaluating with the senses, and then flora meaning plants. So plants evaluate with the senses, creating music. So organoleptic music, it's a new variety that just kind of came to life in the recent times, and I've been lucky enough to somehow stumble across it and figure out how to play music with plants, and they seem to play very beautifully along with you. They kind of follow you. It's really strange. But I really appreciate all you guys getting together, and once again putting this on and making this happen still and persevering through all the madness. Really cool that you guys were able to do this, and thanks for everything. Thanks for having me on. I'm going to let you guys keep on rolling because I know you got a lot to do still. So there's a bunch of amazing musical acts still coming up. So I think Nick Satel is up on deck right now. And then we got a few other artists after that are going to be really awesome as well. So to hang out, chill out, and have a good time listening to some amazing music. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, Tom.
That was pretty cool, man. So that was the first. It was captured here.
Will work. Everybody take a photo. Social media is where this is at. Next year, this should be 10 times as big. Post your photos. Next thing, if you got a joint, now's the time to pull it out.
Komorn Law. Michael Komorn is one of the top attorneys in Michigan that has experience and dedication in criminal defense law. Komorn Law can take your case from arrest all the way from trial, appeals, and even to the Supreme Court. The team at Komorn Law has the compassion and the experience you can look to for help in your time of need. Komorn Law has over 25 years experience in criminal defense. We have accomplished numerous legislative changes through community involvement and lobbying. Our award-winning law firm has a reputation like no other for keeping overreaching government accountable and in check. We have built Komorn Law for people who need lawyers to stand up to the system, fight back and win. Once we become your lawyer, you become a part of our family. Don't settle for less, just ask our clients. Komorn Law, the best damn criminal defense lawyers, period.